Welcome back. This is Nick Zuccarello with nickzook.art, and we are going to be continuing on in this series. And in this part, the things that I really want to focus in on are updating to our modeling. So we're going to be adding some cracks and some other details inside of Maya, taking off some bigger chunks of our pieces that we have here. So our modeling is going to move forward. The other thing that we're going to be taking a look at is how we can build better lighting and atmosphere. We'll take a look at some more advanced things that we can do with blueprinting, so we can add some very simple motion to things. Then we'll start paying attention to camera work and showing you how to use the sequencer inside of Unreal so you can build your first part of your camera motions for your environments. So what I did, I actually was building camera motion and everything from the very get-go. And I've just been progressing this thing along with every stage. So I did the first pass proxy just like you did, and then I did this next stage that you see here. And then I can show you a little later the following stages where I start to update this with sculpt data. So no matter what stage it is, everything should be moving forward and everything should be getting better from a quality standpoint. And so with the lighting part, I want to focus, and I'm going to teach you a little bit more about some materials. We're going to do some material work, so the materials will actually get better too. We're going to take a look at some of these emissive lights that you see here that are lighting up the world. So that's all done through material. And then we're going to be talking about atmosphere with our lighting scenarios. And we'll also take a look at turning on hardware ray tracing. So if you wanted to do any kind of test and you want to test out path tracing, we can take a look at that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, and let's just jump right into this. The first thing we're going to take a look at is some modeling inside of Maya, and we're going to improve the models for this scene that you see here. Here we are inside of Maya, and what I'm going to be doing is basically just taking the Bevel folder that we had and just duplicating that. If you remember what we did to copy the animation from the previous group that we had from Proxy to Bevel, we would do that same exact process, and then we would start to work on something that's called cuts in here. Just to show you what I'm going to be doing, some of the techniques, I'll take this cube basic. I'm just going to duplicate it, hit Shift P to unparent it. So what you should end up with is after you duplicate the bevel, you should have a new folder. After you've duplicated that with Control D, just call that cuts, and then you should be able to start working on one of these parts and pieces individually. And I've actually put these all on layers, so I can easily hide that. I think that would be smart for you to go through each one of the sections that we're doing here. Yeah, go ahead and build layers for yourself, and that will just make your life a whole lot easier to work with on things. So I've got this cube basic, and what I wanted to show you is I've already got the bevel put on there. This is what I chose for the geometry the first time that I built this through. I know it's a little bit different than what I just showed you from the previous video series, but it's up to you how you want to build this and if you want to put those splits in there. I think my thinking was if I put UVs on there, like I was saying, this would be easy to split off for a front, back, left, right, top, and bottom parts of that. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how we can start using some of the Boolean tools inside of Maya to knock off some big chunks within the model. So I'm going to create another polycube just like that, what we've done before. I'm going to rotate this thing, and I'm trying to imagine this thing intersecting with some part or some corner of this. D right there. I'm going to tap E right there for this. Let me just go ahead and move this. I've got two of them, which is fine. I'll go ahead and be using two of these. And I'm going to get this to just intersect. If it doesn't intersect exactly the way that I hope for, that's not a big deal because we're going to be using their Boolean system, and that stuff is actually live now, which is pretty useful for stuff like this. So we've got the model. I've got this. First I want to select this. This is the thing I'm going to keep. I'm going to hold down Shift and then add this and then this right here like that. We've actually looked at the Booleans before in the last video for the series, and that was how we split off the inner arcs that we were doing within there. We used it for that. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to Mesh, Boolean, and we're going to do difference A and B. This time we got multiple objects, But if that was the first thing that we selected whenever we did that, we can go ahead and keep that. And then now we can easily see like what is going to be the quality of the Boolean that we're getting and what's the shapes that are going to be generated for this. One thing that might be helpful for this, if I double click this and I say object mode for the translation and for the rotation on this, this will keep the orientation of the object and just make it a little bit easier for us to move like in and out, up and down along the side here. So I'm going to try to do something like this where I'm going to rotate it and then push it in to get like a longer chunk that's been chopped off like that. Maybe if I rotate it this way a little bit. So you're just going to have to play around with this just a little to see what what are the shapes that get created from this. And I'll go ahead and move this right here. And if I push this up all the way there, that's a pretty big section just cut out there. So I want to do something like that. All right, getting these Booleans set up is really not that big of a deal. It's pretty easy. You saw the selection order. We just selected first the things that we want to Boolean away from, and then the last thing that will get cut into will be the last thing that's selected, and then we set things up with the Boolean tool, just like we looked at, and then it's going to give us this ability to go into the object that we're looking at, and you can find this poly Boolean node, and you can see this actually sits over here in the channel box right there, and you can click on it, and you can see some options for that. But what if you want to add more shapes to this? It looks pretty simple, right? It says add selected objects, and you should be able to just plug in some new shapes, right? I'm just going to go ahead and take this and hit Control D to duplicate this, and we'll move it. And just like we've done before with something else, we can move this down. Now, obviously, this is having zero effect on the object right now. It's because it's not part of that Boolean stack. So you'd be like, maybe I could select this and then select this. Maybe I can go to the Booleans and say add selected, and that will work. If that selection order feels a little bit weird to you, there's something else that we can do where we can keep this window open, because normally with the attribute editor, and you can find that if you go to Windows, General Editors, Attribute Editor, I like to hit the Control A to bring that up. And yours might be actually docked over here. You can actually take things that exist over here, and if you want to undock these things, you can just pull them out. Like if I took this tab and click and drag and pull it out, you can have it floating. I like to have the attribute editor floating. That's just my personal preference, so it's up to you. But let's say we want to put this on some particular node that's in here, and we want it to stay there and stick. They've added this little tack or pen tab thing that you can go ahead and click, and then now it doesn't matter what you select, it will continue to make sure it stays right here focused on this window. So now we can go to this stack that we've got and just say add selected object, and it should be easy for us to add a bunch of different shapes or subtract them away and everything else like that, right? So I'm gonna just push it like right here, and I'm gonna push this down right about there like that. So they have on here this polycube 3 is what we just duplicated. You can see what we're working with here. And if we go here, you can see that we've got this difference A and B. You can also change these things to be something like intersection. This one's just going to slice it, slice through the model. Hole punch, I haven't really messed around with these too much, but you can do a variety of different things. Let's see, if we do a union, yeah, that's just going to join those two objects together, and it might not look like anything's really going on, but it's actually joining these things together and then maybe welding the points right there on there like that, right? So you've got a lot of different tools at your disposal for that. So what I think you should do is work through the model, try to get all the bigger chunks and shapes created that you want on here. I was focusing on trying to make things look visually interesting from every single side, right? So I think that one looks pretty cool. We got a chunk broken off here. This looks a little weak. right here, right? There's nothing going on there. So I could just take another shape, hit Control D, duplicate it, move it over. I'll just push it right up here just to make sure it's working. Say add selected object, just like that. And go ahead and rotate this. I do want just a corner piece kind of pushed off of that thing like that. And depending on how far into the object that we push in, obviously it's going to make it something quite a bit larger. Now you might find yourself needing to move between this object space and world space. If you double click on here in the tool settings, we can keep that open and we can just switch between object and world, and then it makes it really easy just to slide maybe that thing there, and then I can just go back to object if I want to rotate this thing maybe a little bit differently and then push this thing up in here like that. So I think that looks pretty cool there. I've got some kind of detail that is knocking something off of this object in all places. And it might be cool also to do one more, and let's say add selected object to this, and I'm going to do a difference. And what I want to do is just knock off this corner right here on the edge. So let's angle this a particular way, move this up, and then pull this down. And I just don't even want to take very much off of it. So I just got to get that just the right position for that. And I know I'm showing you cubes, but again, this is going to work with any type of shape that you want. So if we make a polysphere, I'll scale this up. I'll add that to it. And let's move this. Instead of union, let's do a difference, A and B, just like this. And we could cut out some cool shapes like this, scale it. Maybe even rotate it in like that. And maybe I just want just a little bit to get pulled off of this thing right there like that. Okay. So I just want to show you that it's possible. It could be possible that you use your own meshes that are solid objects, and you could do Booleans with those as well. I'm just going to get rid of this thing. So if I'm happy with this, if you really wanted to keep things around and make sure you have like this live kind of version, you could hit Control G, you could group this and then call this cube cut something, just name it. And then the next thing I might do is hit Control D to duplicate that whole thing, hide that group that I was building with, and then after that, I would just delete the history on this thing. Alt Shift D, and let's see if we grab all the pieces, delete the history on these. And I think it actually did this for us. Whenever we duplicated everything, it pretty much flattened the history of this and gave us this object that we see here. And I'm just going to get rid of that shape that you see here like that. Okay, so I'm going to hide that, bring this thing back, and one thing I did mess up, I just deleted away that cube basic cut thing, and that should have actually been inside of here like that. Okay, so now I've got this cube that I've got flattened. Let me just go ahead and hide that real quick just to make sure that everything's still working and everything's live. So we should be able to push that. Yeah. So everything works. I just messed up and I didn't have the base cube that I was working with. I needed to have that. I needed to have that in here like that, right? So let's go ahead and hide that. That's a way that you could keep all the parts and pieces. You could work with them and start cutting away on that. Okay. And then this next part, because I need to flatten this because I'm going to start just manipulating things. This is where we're going to go straight to more of a modeling process, right? So what if you wanted to take some of the results of this and you just start finessing it, right? You could do that, no problem. Yeah, so I'm just going to do this. If I knew I had a flat face, I could just move around like this, and I could easily change the shape of this thing that we got going on here. I'm going to turn off the grid right now just so I don't need to look at that. Something else you could do is if you hit F11 or you right click on say face, you select a face. If we do shift right click and I do an extrude face right here, then we can do something like this. I'm going to get this poly extrude. It's got an offset command on there. So you could do this, and then maybe I tap G for my last command, and that gives me another extrusion. And then I could do something where I just push in the corner of that, or instead of going in with it, then maybe I go out, and then you could do another offset this direction. Now you might end up finding if you do this offset too big, you see what's going on there with these verts and they start to overlap each other. What I would do with that is I would just select my vertices, just right click, say vertex, select that, or you can hit F9. I like to drag over the top of these and then have the move tool on, because if I accidentally drag and click something back behind it, you see how the pivot point isn't around those verts anymore? That's a visual indicator for me. So normally I just select it and I just rotate the camera a little bit to go, hey, do I have just these verts selected? Yes, I do. So now I can do shift, right click, merge vertices, and I'll do merge vertices to center, just like that. And I'm just cleaning up some of the problems that you see in here. And you can see how as a 3D artist, I'm always maybe doing some selections. I'm always rotating the camera just a little bit to understand what's going on three-dimensionally on here, like that. So there's a little bit of that, and then the I'm just going to go ahead and close this thing down. We don't really need that anymore. I'll unpin that right there like that. And with the modeling toolkit, they do have this tool in here, the multi-cut tool, and you can see the hotkey for that is Control Shift X. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the multi-cut tool. This one is really nice where you could just let's select the object first, sorry, and now we're in the multi-cut tool. With this tool, we can click and drag and we could just slice straight through the model. So that's pretty cool. That little thing that I showed you here in the corner, we could do something similar with that. We could just slice through this just like that. And I'll show you this. If we go to our faces, or you can right click, say face, or you can hit F11, it's up to you. Now if I just drag a marquee and try to select those faces that are right there, you remember what we just looked at for the extrusion? We can shift right click and we can say extrude face. The other thing is if you are an interface person, we can go up to edit mesh, and you can see that a lot of the operations that I'm showing you with the shift right click, they all exist within either mesh or edit mesh right in through there. So right here is the extrude. So it really depends on how you want to work, right? I suggest that you try to learn hotkeys because it's just going to make you a lot faster for things. And so if I do this offset, I just showed you that we can only push this thing so far. There's that. You could potentially play around with thickness, so you can pull that in. There is a local Z, so that pushes out just a little bit different. There's some divisions on there that I'm not really going to mess around with that. Now, what I do know is if I do the extrusion on this tool, and I know that I've got this as a selection, I can tap R to go into the scale tool. And if I want, I could scale uniformly from the center. And sometimes that might give you better results than that offset that we're doing and trying to push that in. And then you can just put it on the move tool and just slightly push this over here like that. That's up to you. And if you want to do some stuff where, hey, that got chipped off here really badly, but I don't want this to go all the way around, then we can start doing the target weld tool over here in the modeling toolkit right there. And we could start to just do some things like this where we merge some of these results back up just like that. And now it feels like we've got this thing and it worked pretty well here, and then it starts to get chipped off and maybe move down below. If you don't like how it dips right there, we could do this. We could select the verts. We could put it on the transform tool over here. I'm going to hold down V, and then I'll just turn on vert snap, and I'll just move it up and just tap one of these verts, and then you can see now I've raised that up right there. I could do the same thing for this here, then right here, just like that. And if I want to get these in line with those, I could do this here, here, and then here. And then that might give us this point in the center that we've got to do some stuff with. So we can just hold down V and then move it up here. And I just might manually move this into position somewhere around there. So it took me a little while sometimes when I'm doing modeling to just let go of trying to have this just be absolutely perfect, you know. It's there are ways to do this. So I could delete these edges, and sometimes you might find yourself in a position like this. So Control-Shift-X will do this multi-cut tool. And if I delete away some of these edges, I know that this makes this a completely flat face. So using that to my advantage, I might just go and use the multi-cut tool, cut across there. With the multi-cut tool, the other thing that you can do is you can hold down Shift and it'll give you these degrees of increments of snapping. If this is a 90-degree thing, you can hold down Control-Shift and it'll give you something like that. So if I just split right across there, right in the center, and I do F9 for my vert, put on the Move tool, if you do Control-Shift, you can actually drag this along this edge that you see here. So Control-Shift will let you slide this along, and you see, depending on the axes that I choose, I can slide it this way, and I can go up and down. So I could just try to manually rebuild what was going on there with that part. Okay, so you might find that useful for things at times. I'm going to go back to the multi-cut tool, and something else that I was doing is some of the cracks that were within through here. I would just maybe drag off of some part on here. So if you just, with the multi-cut tool, if you just start clicking and dragging, you can go along an edge. Now, if you just click and drag all the way to that vert there, it's automatically going to make sure it snaps like to that vert or to this one. If you want to go from here across, it's up to you. But that's how you can get it to absolutely snap to that part there. You know, you can just start from a vert and go across. I'm used to an older tool that worked like this, starting from an edge. So that's what I'm comfortable with. And you can cut across to multiple edges like this. So you can see us automatically figuring that out for you. We could cut arbitrarily right into the middle of a face and then maybe come here and go down like that. So the multi-cut tool is really cool. It's pretty versatile and lets you do a whole lot of operations on there. And you can get away with a lot doing this. You can also make some bad geometry, so you do need to be a little bit cautious about what you're doing. Now we're making n-gons like crazy in here. We'll deal with that a little bit later when we go to push that into ZBrush. ZBrush does not like n-gons at all, so it's pretty easy for us to select the n-gons within a model and triangulate that and then export that out. So we'll deal with that later. So don't get too hung up on the fact that you're making n-gons. So I'm going to drag out from here. I'm going to go maybe right about here and keep cutting across. So you see if I get too close to that, it will snap up to that. So let's do something like this. And then I'm going to finish this off as a piece of geometry right here because I want to split down the center of this thing. So I'm going to go from this edge. You can see I pushed all the way to that vertice. If I want it to go right down the middle, I can hold down Shift and snap and make sure it says 50%. I'm not going to be that picky about it. I'm just going to draw right in through here like this. And then now that gives us some geometry that we can take. So let's hit F10. I'm just going to select my edges. And I'm going to select this edge, this one, because I don't need this edge. If I select this edge, it's going to move that vert there. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to push it in just a little bit. If we do this thing where this is I wish I knew about this earlier, so I'm going to share it with you. It's not really that big of a deal right now, but you might find this useful where you need to grow something and push it in the surface or out from the surface along the normals, like the direction of the faces that we see here. If you hold on Control and middle mouse drag, you can either you can push things in or out from the surface. So I'm just pushing this in through here like that. Okay, and that's a little bit, it is different than just taking the move tool and just pushing it in, right? So if I took these verts right here on the edge and I control middle mouse, you can see how it expands or contracts like this. So it's a different way of moving something about the surface on there. The other thing that I'm going to do is I need to control my soft and hard edges. Right now, if I hit F8, deselect this, and then turn off the wireframe on shaded, you can see that detail that I just put in there is not very easy to see because it's got soft normals on there. So what I want to do is hit F10 to select my edges, or right click, say edge. And I'm going to get this manipulator out of the way. If you need to get the manipulator out of the way when you're selecting, you just tap Q, and that will give you this selection thing right up there. And I'm just going to hold down Shift, click on here, select all these edges. I think I even want this to be hard edge right there. So we'll do this. I'm going to keep this hard edge. And I don't need these hard edge. I'll just keep those soft. And then now we can do Shift, right click, and we can do soften harden edges. And we'll do harden edges. So again, after you get your selection, Shift, right click, go drag to soften harden edges, and I'll just harden the edges up on there like that. Okay. You can also get to this from mesh display, and you can reverse your normals. You can harden edges, soften edges, and if you want to use a threshold on the model for the angles that it has on the geometry, you can use soften harden edges, do the option box, and you can give it an angle on there. So if you wanted to do some kind of universal thing and try to capture that, that might be a starting point for you, right? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to push this here, just finessing the shapes again just a little bit, and if it's a little bit too much for me that I'm looking at, move around the model, evaluate it, do something like that. You might want to do maybe a few more cracks that you have on through there to get that and see what you're working with. So I'm going to hop over to Unreal, and I'll just do a little pan through the world and show you some of the stuff that I was doing on this. Like I said, I was trying to make this look interesting from, you know, every time I could flip this, it looked a little bit different. It wasn't exactly the same. Here's where I did that little corner trick that I showed you on here. You can see some of the splits that we've got going on. And again, you could straight up model all this stuff inside of ZBrush, but I do think this is a way that you could just pretty quickly model out some of these details, push it to where you've got this final proxy level, get an evaluation on this stuff, get a read on it, make sure it's feeling unique as you look all the way through the world, and seeing the parts in combination with each other is a pretty big deal, right? So here's all the different cut shapes that I've got. And if things look good from this point here, you can always improve that tons through your sculpting, right? But then this gives you a good base to start working with. Yeah, so I think that's important. I will go ahead and just hide this real quick, and then let's go back to the channel box area, and I'll turn on my cuts and just show you a little bit about what I was saying, where like what I modeled with some of this stuff inside of Maya. So in order to update the shapes, we've already looked at how we can save this out as a whole new thing, right? So I tried to break it apart into proxy, bevel, and then now we're at this cuts level. So before I made the cuts, I just took the bevel, duplicated that, and started turning that into cuts, made a whole new layer for these things so I could easily see what's going on. export that out as an FBX like we just looked at. We already looked at how we can mass update all these shapes and then get the material in with it and then replace that material with the material that we've already created. So we've already looked at all that. So that's the next step that I would have you do is go through and build what you would consider like your cuts for things and start seeing how this extra level of detail plays out with the parts and pieces that you made. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about and show you is the different blueprint pieces that I created for the set that you see within through here that I used. I'm just going to go ahead and load this up and I'll just show you what I built. For these, I thought these were kind of fun and interesting, just visual elements that sit outside. I am going to show you a little bit about this part and piece here and how I was able to set this up to animate for the light. I'll talk to you about the materials on that too. But here's the shape that I did here. I built some columns and pillars, and I thought that would be some interesting shapes. I also built just some just parts of a column with no detail that sits on there. I did replace these out later with, we have the double shape that we could just stack two of those on top of each other. And I used that a little bit later on. I built my door archway that we see here. And then I built an archway that was even wider back and through here. Also did some windows treatments that you see here. So I did a square version of the windows, and then I also did an arched version of that you see in through there. Okay, and so I also added these elements that I just thought they were cool little accents for lights that are kind of floating in there. So it's completely up to you what you want to do with that, but I just took one of the basic cubes and then scaled that down and put it into to some like strategic places. And then I also built a for the material, I built this emissive type of material. Okay, I did want to show you that. So there is all of the blueprints that I made. And if we go to the materials area, you can see here was the blue material that I made. And if I go and you ever want to see what the parent material is that's feeding any of the materials, you should be able to go to material instance and you should be able to just double click on this icon and it'll load up and show you what's going on with this. So everything is the same like what we looked at before. We can just right click in here and we can make these parameters. Nothing different about the values really on this stuff, but what does start to become different is what I did with this emissive color. So one of the techniques that I was using is, and that I like quite a bit, is called Fresnel. And Fresnel node will give you a shading difference from where the camera is looking at an object. So if it's something like a sphere, we can get an inner part to this, and then as the normals face away from the camera, we can start to get shading on here. So we can use that as like a black and white mask, and we can tell it how soft and how hard edged this could be. So you could use it for fake rim lighting, or in my case, I wanted to make something emissive and I wanted the outer part to be a different emissive value than the inner part. So you can make something feel like it's got like an inner glow to it or something, right? So to find that node, that's pretty easy. You just type in Fresnel. You should be able to find the Fresnel node like that. And again, we can just right click on here and we can say promote parameters for this. So we've got an exponent in. This is the softness or the fall off that goes on this outer edge. Then there's this next base reflect fractional in. And you can see the default value for that is something very, very low. I actually should have put this on here, 0.04. I don't really mess around with that too much. That can start to say like, okay, this softness or this outer edge, we can give it a thickness with the exponent, and then the base reflect fraction in can actually start to even tighten that line up even a little bit more. This thing was always difficult for me to find the pixel normal world space, and I don't know why. So if I just type in pixel normal like there, you should be able to find this pixel normal world space like that. And all you got to do is just plug this in. This is just trying to get the normal information from the world right there. So that's what I did with the nodes. To add this comment to things to keep things nice and organized, this is actually really handy. You can select, whatever nodes you want. You can tap C, and you can actually even comment with things within a comment, right? The other thing that's nice about this is we can click and drag this, and it'll drag all the nodes. It's like a container, right? And if you drag things out of it, let's see if I do this and drag it out. I'm not sure if that, nope. So we can just drag things out, and that'll go ahead and do that. And you can see if I had this selected, I could just tap C, and then we could add a new comment to the, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to get rid of this right here, and I'll go ahead and put this back in here. So this is the Fresnel node setup that I did, and then I was feeding that into a lerp node, a linear interpolation node. So if you just type in lerp, I'm not sure if we can find it that way. We can go linear interpolation node. Normally what I just do is hold down L. That just makes it much easier to find that way. So actually to type it, I was just I was getting a little too impatient. So linear interpolate, you just type in linear, it exists right down there. So you can find this. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you know this concept of layers, right? And you could think of the slot A and B being two different layers, and then this alpha lets you blend between the two of them, okay? So for me, I wanted an emissive inner color and an outer color, and I wanted to be able to drive the difference between those two things with this alpha. So I got the linear interpolation node, take the out of this and plug it in here. And remember, if you tap one, hold on one tap, 2, 3, and then 4, we get these different, we get a scalar value, then we get these 2 scalar values, then we get 3 values, which is a vector, and we get this other one that's got red, green, blue, and alpha. So that's how we can get these different nodes. We'd have to right click in there and convert to parameter on each one of these if we want to turn them into parameters. So that's how I got the color information that you see here, and just was able to give it a name. Once you have one built and give it a name, you can just duplicate the thing, copy, paste it, and then make sure to change the name on there. So if I wanted a third version of that, then I've got 3 of these that are going to show up, and we can mess around with the material that way in the material instance, right? So I just got this color 1, color 2, and then I'm taking the result of that. And if I want to kill the overall thing on here, like if I set everything up, I like the way that it looks, but I want this overall control to just kill the emissive or lessen it, I'm using a multiply node, so that one's easy. Just click M and tap, or you can right click and search for multiply and find that. And what I'm doing is taking the result of everything, this chain, putting in the A slot, and then I gave myself another parameter. So you can just right click on this B slot. Gonna, just let me hold on Alt and break this just so you see what's going on here. You can right click on here, say promote to parameter, just like we did before, and then you can just give it a name. What I called it was overall glow amount. And because if we take something and we multiply it by 1, I'm not very good with math, but I do know this. You multiply something by 1, you get the same result, right? So I know that will, just if I put the value 1 here, it will not really do anything. So I want that at the beginning, but then I want the ability to basically lessen that effect. And so if I multiply it with a lower number, like 0.5, then I've just like killed that effect like by half, right? And if I do 0.25 on there, then I've done it by a fourth. And if I put it all the way to 0, because multiply is a darkening effect, if I put that all the way to 0, it's going to make it pure black within there. and it will kill the entire thing. So if I get this nice little setup, I can run this to Emissive. And then I wanted to show you basically what did that look like. So I took that same blue material that I've got within here. I just duplicated it, and then I made a new version, called it, instead of blue, I called it orange. And this is a material instance, right? So if we open that up and take a look at it, here I want to show you I assigned it to the sphere already. And I did want to tell you this. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but if you want to find a sphere that you can kind of play around with and you don't have any within your content area, it's possible that you can go to the engine content area and you can find things within the engine itself. You might have to open up this gear icon and just say engine content so you can actually see that. Otherwise, it's hidden for you. So I don't know if yours is visible or not. So you can go to engine. You can just type in sphere, and you should be able to find a static mesh that's in a sphere. There's a couple different ones in there. I would just use this arcade editor sphere. So you see what that did. This is pretty nice. This gives us a nice little thing to limit so we can find anything that's sphere. If we click out of there, we can actually even go and say, hey, we only want to look at static meshes. And if you want to clear that stuff, we can just get rid of this right here, remove static mesh like that. So it's a way that you can limit what you're seeing within through here, and you're filtering the information that you're looking for on there. So let me go back to the materials here. So now I've got this value. I told you I did this inner color, and I've got this outer color, and I was trying to make it a little bit more obvious for you to see what's going on here. I know with the emissive, maybe it's a little bit difficult, so maybe if I push this all the way down here, maybe up, just push it up just a little bit. I think that's still probably going to give us the best result with this emissive stuff. So I've got an inner color, I've got an outer color. If you remember what I was telling you about this, the exponent, if we make this some higher value like this, I think the default is usually around 5 or something like that. I was pulling that down to 1. Now, if I do make this one black, you can really see what's going on. So I've killed the inner emissive completely. And then now I could take this exponent and you can see how we can grow or we can shrink this. I think this is just a really cool effect, just period. So you can do stuff with inner color, outer color. We plugged it into emissive. You can definitely plug that into base color. You could plug it into both. You could do this for the metallic part of it. You could do this for the roughness value on there. If you're making a glass material, you can make it more opaque on the outer part and more transparent on the inner part. So there's a whole lot that you can do with this node. I'm just a big fan of it. So that's why I wanted to show it to you. I think it's pretty fun to use. So okay, so then we've got this overall glow amount, and then the default was set to 1. And you can see I've got really low values within through here. Obviously, this is 0, and then this one is set to 0.123. Now it's possible that you can overdrive the values within here like that. So the higher I go, the more emissive it's going to be. But if I just want to put this at 1, we'll do this, and now we got this overall glow amount. I was telling you if we lower the value, we can start to kill that effect like that, so it's all the way gone. The other thing is if you want to overdrive it, we can overdrive the values. So we've got normal values within here. Maybe I choose that inner orange color and push it down just a little bit within through here like that. And then now I could really crank the values of that quite a bit. So you got a lot to play around with. I wish I could give you some like exact information for how you could build certain values on here. It's going to take some experimentation on your part to figure out like what color combinations that you see work well together. Yeah, just playing around with the thickness of some of the shading The other thing that I wanted to show you is that because we have lumen on, these emissive values are actually lighting up the world. Now, currently at the time of the making of this video, this type of lighting information introduces quite a bit of noise into things. I feel like it maybe is getting better for sure, and I'm guessing their goal is over time, yeah, to make that of higher quality. But you do have to maybe worry about that a little bit. So what you could do is you build this emissive effect. Try not to rely on it too much for lighting up the world. And then if you really need something to say it's lighting up that particular spot, I'll just tap G to turn on game mode so we can see this here. And let me push this down just for a second. What I might do at that point is start to introduce some color to this light, and I might just tell it to not cast shadows, and then I could have a whole lot of control over how much light's being pushed into the world there through this light. So this is definitely the old school method. Would be you had some visual thing to make you think that there's a light there, and then you have a light in that area to actually illuminate things. So I still think using lights is probably going to give you the best results, and there's going to be less noise on there. But I'll leave that up to you to take a look at. Okay, so I think that's quite a bit of information for that. So there's enough for you to kind of play around with, to mess around with the getting your shapes in order for your blueprints. But then also, if you want to add some accents and you want to start doing a little bit of playing with materials and play with some of the glows, I think that'll be good. So the next thing I want to do is start teaching you how we can do some very simple blueprint stuff to get some animation and some motion on our components and our pieces. All right, now that we've added some interest to our model and added complexity to that, we've also taken a look at how we can update some of our materials and do some glowing effects. The next thing I want to start to talk to you about is adding some environmental motion through our blueprints. So we've already looked at how we could set up a blueprint and we could use those as prefabs. Now I'm going to start showing you a few different nodes within the blueprint area to where we can start to add motion to some of the different components that we're building in the scene. So let's take a look at that. So the first thing we're going to look at is this very simple rotation to the entire blueprint. You can see I've added this rotating movement node that's in here. I've got everything else unhooked right now. We're going to talk about how we can get into some of the options for this. But if you just want to put some very simple rotation on something, you can go to add your components and then type in rotate, and then you can find this rotate movement node. Now you can see in this rotate movement node, you click on it and you can just give it an axis that you want to rotate on. And I believe the default value is 180 like this. And you can see this is about the speed that it plays within right here. I'll just go ahead and stop this. If we wanted to put this on something like 15, and then I'm going to go ahead and come in through here and just say simulate, or you can hit that gray button there. You can see that you can control the rotation rate very easily that way. Now, currently, right now with the options by default, it's going to rotate the entire blueprint. I'm going to show you some other things that we can do to this to control this and make sure we're only rotating certain objects. All right. So the other thing that we can do is we can control the play rate, and we could set that in the world if we set up a variable for ourselves. So I'm just going to push this down real quick like this. And what we're going to use is this set rotation rate that we've got. So if you click and drag the rotating movement into the world, you're going to get this node. And with the blueprints, if you click and drag off, you can see that you've got this context sensitive thing on here. Now, I will say some of this has been confusing for me, like how to find a node. Sometimes you have to click off this to maybe find something. But I'll put this back on here in this context sensitive. And I'm just going to try doing a set play, or actually rotation rate. So sometimes I might, so if I do rotation, I can see I at least got some part of that, and I can say set rotation rate. And then now if I take this from the event begin play. This feels like some kind of electrical current, so I got to take the power cord and I got to plug this into this right here to get this to start working. And right now, if I compile this and I simulate, it shouldn't do anything because we have not set a value on here for this. Now, if we put this back to something like 15, let's go ahead and compile that. And every time you write some type of code visually inside of Blueprints, you need to compile, and then you might want to save that. So now I'll go ahead and run that, and you can see it's going to run this at 15 like this. So what's the benefit of doing this, right? So if we actually take this node and we want to make this into a variable that we can turn on in the world, like if we selected one of these pillars and we wanted to come over here to the details panel and have some kind of control on there to say, hey, I want to be able to rotate this thing at a different rate, and each one of these things that I put in the world, so you can see I've got a couple of them in the world, and if I want them to rotate at a different rate, I can set up some controls for that. Now, what I would need to do is set a rotation rate, make a variable out of that. So we should be able to right click on here and say promote to variable, and that will give us the right variable type for this. You can see the variable type, it's setting it to a rotator for us. If we go ahead and compile, and this tripped me up at the beginning too, where if I put a new node in, I need to compile to get to some of the options for that. So you see how this rotation rate just popped up within there. So now this is the default rotation rate for us is set to 15. Now, if we click on this instance editable, you see how this little eyeball icon just turned on for that? If we go ahead and compile that and we save it, and then we take a look at this in the world, let me pull this down and pull this over. Now we should be able to click on this, and you see that there's now this variable that's been exposed to us, and we can change the value of that. So I can put that back to like 180, and I'll go ahead and simulate this, and you can see this one's going super, super fast. The default value for this is what's set in here. So the default value for all the objects that we place in there will be 15. So like if I drag out a new copy here, and here like this, and I just go ahead and click this simulate button, you can see that this one's going at its own rate because we've taken that variable, we've exposed it. So each instance of this is editable. And so now I could take this one, and if I wanted this to be 50, let's do this one to 100 like this, and then we just click the simulate. You can see we're going to get different play rates for these things on there. Okay. The next thing is, what if we want to say, I only want like this middle bar to rotate instead of the entire object? There is an option within here. If we go into the event graph, we take a look at the rotating movement part on here. If we do this auto register update component and we turn that off, and then we compile it and then save it, and then let's simulate it and see what happens. Nothing's going to move. Nothing's going to happen at that point. We need to now tell it explicitly what do we want to rotate, right? And we can do that with this set update component. You already saw how we can click and drag this into the world for the rotating movement node, and we're getting that value on there like that. And we can drag out and we can say set updated component, and that's how we get this node that you see here like this. What that's going to do, if we drag out from there, it automatically connects it into the rotating movement for the target. It gives us this node so we can plug in our power supply if you want. And then it's also saying, what is this new updated component that you want everything to rotate from, right? And if I choose just the cube light, and if I drag that out, just like I did here, and I hook that into this new updated component, and I plug this in, just like what we've got here. Let me compile that. Okay. And let's go ahead and let's simulate this right now. And so you can see nothing else is going to rotate except for that top part of that cube. All right. And if I wanted to change that to the mid cube, this node will only let you plug in one thing at a time, right? So I'm going to show you a little workaround for that. I'm going to go pilot, I'll save it. Let's just simulate it again. And you can see that we've got this going on here. If you ever want to try to simulate within the blueprint itself here and not in the game, you can click this simulation here, and you should be able to see if it's working within this area as well. All right, so I'll go back to the event graph. So this is how we can get the middle part to rotate. Now, what if you wanted multiple parts and pieces to rotate with that middle bar? Well, you can actually do a hierarchy in here, and you can assign something as a child to a parent relationship. So right now I've got this cube mid rotating, and I'm going to want the cube light to go with it. So I'll just click and drag this onto cube mid, and you can see it parents it to this. And if I compile it and then save, I'm just going to simulate in the world here. And now you can see we've got those two things moving together. And I could parent all kinds of other things with that in here, right? So we could do fun things like if we add a light, like if I'll find just a point light, I'll put that in here. I'll go to viewport and I'll push this actually out like this. The intensity is pretty crazy, so let's do even 1,000 and see if we can pull that down. Let's just make the light color, just so we know what's going on. We'll make it red, and we'll take the attenuation radius and put it down to something like 200, right around there. And maybe take this up to about 2,000. So we know that the light's working, right? I'll go ahead and compile and save that. And right now, if I simulate, I believe the light's going to stay, but actually I already put the point light, and it's attached to this cube light here. So we could either have it parented to the cube mid, or we can have it parented to the cube light. But you see now that as we simulate, that light should rotate around with it, and we get some kind of thing going in here. And the cool thing is, because it's in blueprints, we've done this for every single instance that exists in the world out here. So, maybe you're wanting to do police sirens or something like that, and you've got a red and a blue one. You could do something like that. So there's a whole lot of possibilities for you and what you could do with this. So I'd encourage you to play around with that. Okay, now that we've got our feet wet and we know a little bit about blueprinting, let's learn some more extended functionality with our blueprints. Let's take a look at using a level blueprint. So if we come up here to this area under the blueprints and we say open level blueprint, we can get access to the level blueprint. So the level blueprint is just what it says. It's a blueprint that is explicitly for the level itself. So you will need to set this up. If you make a new level, you'll have to recreate these controls. That's not too difficult. You can always just copy and then paste them. A little bit later on, I'm going to show you a way that we can get a set of universal controls that will just take in place into every one of our levels. But this is a nice way of just getting your feet wet with some of this stuff, right? So if we go click this open level blueprint, yours is going to look a little bit different than mine. I've already got some stuff in there, but you should see that there is this event begin play, and if I got rid of the other parts on there, there's maybe some of this for event tick. But what I'm going to have us focus on is how can we pause the game, how can we exit from the game, and how can we show the FPS counter on here like that for us, right? And so if I just go ahead and I actually play the game and I hit tap P, that should be able to pause it. You can see if I tap escape, that'll exit out, but I don't want to do that. If I tap F, it's going to show me the frames per second on here. If I tap F again, it will turn that off, and I hit escape, and we can escape out of there. So the way that we're working with this is with these execute console commands. So you may or may not know this, but if you play the game and you hit the tilde key, that brings up a prompt, and you can type in things like pause like this and hit enter. You can see it actually pauses the game. If we hit the tilde key again, you can hit the up and down arrow key, and you can get to different commands. You can see before I was doing a high-res screenshot, and I controlled the value of 3,840 by 2,560, so full 4K. So that's another thing that you could do within there. But if I just hit that up key and hit pause and hit enter, you can see it's going to unpause that, right? If I hit the tilde key and then I type in exit, we can always exit the game, and that's what we're doing with that right there. Let's go ahead and play it one more time, and you can see if I hit the tilde key within through here, and then we do stat FPS, that's showing us the frames per second counter. If I hit the tilde key again, hit up, I can get to that, and hit enter again, then that's going to turn it off for us. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape and get out of there. So doing those things over and over again is prompting me to say, I should really probably build some controls for this. That way I don't have to keep typing this stuff in, and I can just use my keyboard and while I'm playing, and I can get to those options for it. So that makes it pretty nice. So what I did here was we just tied this to the P key, but before we do that, let's just look at this execute console command. So if you just type in here, execute, and start to type that in, you should be able to find this execute console command. So this is what we get for it, right? And we can plug multiple things into this. You could do an overlap event, and you can have that drive things, but I just want to tie this to the keyboard controls. Now to get to that, if you right click on here and you scroll down, there should be an area for input. So let's just scroll down here to input, and if you open this up, there's a bunch of different things that you can use as an input device. We want keyboard events, and if you scroll through there, you can see that you should be able to find just about every key that exists on the keyboard. So in this case, I just wanted to find the P key. For that, grab the P key, and then whenever I press it, it's going to execute this command. Here's where you actually put the command in there. And what I would suggest for you is you learn the command, you test it out in game, make sure you've got the spelling correct and everything else like that, because I'm just notoriously horrible for spelling, and if you miss some part of this, it's not going to work, right? And so all I did, you can do this execute console command. I did one for pause, I did one for exit, and then I've got one for stat FPS, and you can see there is a space in between each one of those, right? Let me go ahead and get rid of this, just like this. While we're talking about functionality and control on there, if I selected everything that I built like this and then tap C, that's going to give us the comment for that. And you can also make comments of comments, right? So I could, overall game controls or something like that. So it just gives you some possibility of controlling some of this stuff. I'm going to try to get this out of here. This one thing that's a little bit tricky about this is moving this stuff out. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so this is what's driving everything. Let's just go ahead. You always want to make sure you compile, make sure you save, and then I'm going to go ahead and play within there, and you can see that we've got our F for our frame counter. We've got that. We can pause the game, and I can tap P to unpause it, and I can hit escape. Now you might go to pause the game, and it pauses for you, and then it doesn't unpause. What is happening for that? If we click on the control for this, for the P key, so you can see that you can tell this to execute even whenever it's paused, right? So we could do the same thing with these. I don't have them on currently, so let's just test this out real quick. Let's go ahead and hit play, and while I'm in this mode and I hit escape, it's going to work. That's because we're in editor right now. But if I tap P to pause this, and if we tap F to turn on the frame counter, that doesn't work. Okay, let's hit escape for that real quick. Let's see if we can get this working. So let's go ahead and click this, and let's tell it to execute when paused. Compile it, save it. Okay, and let's go ahead and hit play. So let's go ahead and pause it, and now I can tap F, and you can see I can turn on and off that frame counter. So this gives you control and lets you say, do you want this to work when this is paused or not? For the exit, I will tell this to execute when paused, and I'll compile this and I'll save it. Just because, actually, I'm gonna turn this off so you can see what's gonna happen in this case. All right. So we're just playing an editor right now, but if we said we're going to play this standalone game, and what Unreal does is it basically takes everything you got and kind of packages it up real quick, and it makes it to where you can play in this standalone editor window. Um, it will actually give you better performance and will give you a much more accurate representation of the frame rate and everything else. It's probably good for you to check in this mode every now and then. You can see it took a little bit for this to go ahead and play in there. If you want, you can hit Alt Enter in this mode and you should be able to do a full screen version of this. But if I tap P and I pause the game here and I hit Escape, nothing's going to happen because we're paused. Now, if I tap P and now I hit Escape, I can get out of there. All right. So it's really up to you what you want for this functionality. Again, if I want to have that execute when paused, I'm going to go ahead and hit Compile. I'll save it. Let's just close this down real quick. And let's put this in the standalone game. We'll go ahead and play it. Let it go ahead and load up. And then this time it should recognize those controls for us. Okay, it's just going to take a second for it to get loaded up and through there. I'll go ahead and hit Alt Enter just to do full screen on here like that. And then now if I tap P and pause it and I hit Escape, it still works. So there's some options for you to do some very, very simple stuff within the level blueprint to give yourself some game controls. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what if we wanted to move this out of the level blueprint and we wanted to do something that was more like a universal control, that we just make one blueprint. We only have to update that one blueprint. Anytime we make a level, we just throw it into that new level and it'll give you all the controls that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so we've taken a look at how we can use level blueprints to add some gameplay functionality to our levels, but what if we want to make a universal control that we can put into every brand new level that we make and not have to recreate that every time? So what I'm doing is making a new blueprint. You can see I just made a folder for myself and I call this game controls. You can call this whatever you want. You just right click on here and you can say blueprint class, and I just made an actor blueprint class and that created this node. I called mine BP underscore universal game controls. Again, you can call it whatever you want, but this is just going to help me keep things organized and I can remember what I've got going on. So if I double click on this, you're going to see some of these default nodes. There should be the event begin play node that's on there. And if you've already made things in a level blueprint, it's possible that you can just copy and you can paste in between blueprints, right? So I could just grab this whole thing, just copy it. And you can see I've unhooked this. If you have a connection with things and you want to unhook things, you can hold down Alt and then click on that, and that will disconnect those. So you can see that I don't have this working in the level blueprint anymore. I copied this, and then I pasted it in here to the game controls. Now, if you don't have this up here, which I'm going to show you, this will not work because you're not getting any type of actual input into the game. In order for this blueprint to be able to be seen and access the either game controller or the keyboard, we need to have that blueprint and we need to place it into the world. That's one step. And then the other part is we need to do this enable input. So you can see on event begin play, I just right click on here and we can just type in enable, and we can find enable input. That's that node that you see here. And then in order to tell it which version of the controller or the player that we're using, we need to get this get player controller. So that's easy to find too. We can just drag out and then say get player, and then you can start to find that and get player controller. Now, programming terms, they always start counting with 0. So that's why you see this player index 0. And if you had multiple people, you might have to actually say what number that is for which player that you're talking about. But in our case, we don't need to do that. So we just pipe in the out of the event begin play, and that's going to this enable input, and it's going to find our default player for that. And then now these controls will start to work. We've already taken a look at if we pause the game, if we exit, and then we do the stat FPS. The other thing that I was doing is I had a console command in there before that you saw pop up, and this is to do different high res screenshots. So you can see the code for that is high res shot space, and then you give your dimensions. And then in this case, I made three of them. I made one for making a shot that was 1920 by 1080. This one's 2560 by 1440. And then this one's 3840 by 2560. Okay, just like we did before, I actually selected each one of these nodes and we need to say, hey, execute this whenever we're paused. So I'll turn that on for each one of these. The other thing that I did, I'm going to compile and save that real quick, is I used the numpad, I'm sorry, not the numpad, the keyboard value of 1, 2, and 3. I did first try out F1, F2, and F3, and I forgot if you go into game and you hit F1, that's going to render the game in wireframe mode. F2, I believe, is in albedo mode. Maybe F3 is these different rendering modes. We can go through that and take a look at that. So we couldn't use those. So I was using these different keyboard presses. Again, if we right click and go to input and scroll down, we open up input and then we go to keyboard events. These are all the different number keys. The numpad, if you want to use the numpad, that's actually a different set within through there. Here's all your F1 through F9, or sorry, F12. And then you can see here's the numpad if you wanted to use the numpad for things. So we could do this. We could go numpad 1. The other thing I want to show you with this is it's possible that you can have multiple inputs that are put in here right there like that, right? So if I want to move all this up, I'm going to select this, hold down shift, or actually hold on shift, and I can move this whole thing up. I need to give a little bit more space here. So I'll pull that down, just right click to kind of pan that thing around. I'll grab these here and then pull them down, and I need just a little bit more space like this. So I'm going to build a few more just like that. Let me pull this down here. I'll push this right about here and maybe pull this up just a little bit, and then middle mouse scroll to zoom in. Okay, and then the next thing, if you want to take this num1, I can copy and you can also paste. Now, if we want to change the values on there, you can see if we do this drop down, now we kind of know. I'll just do num2 and I should be able to easily find that. I'll plug that in just like that, and then I'll copy and paste again, and I'll plug this in here, and then I will do num3 right there, grab that and change that. And again, we need to make sure that these are able to be executed when paused. Why I was doing that is it might be nice for you to be playing the your game, your experience. You find some place where you're like, hey, I'd like to take a screenshot of that. Now you can hit the buttons. That's one thing you can do. But if you want to give yourself a little bit more time, you should be able to just hit the keys on this, right? So let's go ahead and play this real quick, and I can show you what we're talking about. If we hit F11, we can go into full screen mode, and if you hit Shift F11, that will go into true full screen, get rid of your Windows taskbar at the bottom. So I'm just kind of moving around in the world here, and if I establish that this is a shot that I would like, I can just tap 1, and then that should hit, and you can see it's going to make a screenshot of the 1920 by 1080. We do 2, and we're going to do a screenshot of the next resolution up, and if we do 3, just like that, it's going to do a much higher resolution screenshot. If we tap P, let's go just make another shot for ourselves right here. If we tap P, we can pause it, and then we can give ourselves some time. I'll tap 3 to do the larger screenshot like that, and then I could tap P again to unpause. And so that was the number 1, 2, and 3 key. Let's just try the num key real quick. I'll tap 1, and that's working. 2, and then another one for 3. And then that's all working for us. So I'll go ahead and hit escape for this. I'll hit F11 to go back into this mode. And you can see if we click on there, we can actually get access pretty quickly to where all the screenshots sit. It's pretty simple. You just go to the wherever you're storing your project. You can see Unreal Projects. This is the name of this current project that I have. And if you go in there, and if you go under Saved, and you go to Screenshots, we'll open this up under Windows Editor. You should be able to get access to all the different screenshots that you've been doing for that particular project. And you can see if I double click and I load these up, or actually can hover over the top of them, we've got a couple different ones. And this is like the 1920 by 1080. This should be the 2560, and then this is the largest one within through there. Okay, so that should give you some nice little examples of what could you do if you want to make a universal control, throw it into the world, and then that way you can just keep updating this thing, and we can keep taking a look at this. Every time we make a new level, we'll just throw it into the level, and we'll have all those cool controls that we built for ourselves. So I wanted to specifically call out to you that if you want to make sure that you're in this mode where you're in the game and you're flying around and you're not actually the character running around, I want to make sure you have a good grasp on how to set that up and make sure that you can be in either this fly mode, or we can be in a mode where we're actually in the third person mode. So I'm going to hit F11 and go back into the editor that you see here. We do need to make sure that this world settings tab is set up over here. If you don't see that, go to Window, and then we need to go to World Settings and enable that and make sure that that's open for us. And so now we got Details panel, and we've got the World Settings. You can see at the very top there should be this Game Mode Override. We've already set this in an earlier video and made sure we're in the third person mode, but every time you make a new level, you might need to go ahead and add this. So currently, if you have this set to none, it will just let you do this fly mode, where if we go into the game, we're just using WASD to fly around. E is going to take you up, Q is going to take you down like that. We can use our mouse to kind of look around. So these are the controls that we're used to. You can get around and go basically everywhere. You do still have collision enabled, so I can't just fly through walls and things like that. So there's that. And then if we want to make sure that we go into third person game mode, go to this game mode override, just click this, and then you can see with the third person template, you should have this BP third person game mode. Go ahead and click that. And then now whenever we play, you can see I'm going to start off with the character, and I'll be able to run around with the character. All right. The next thing I'm going to show you is some controls that we can do to add some additional functionality to the player character. So let's go ahead and hit escape, and let's take a look at that. All right, I want to show you some extended functionality of this player character right here. So normally we just hit the space bar and you can see the height that we're jumping. If I hold down shift, I can make my character jump a whole lot higher. Normally when we run, we have this speed, and if I hold down shift, I can increase his run speed. And then when I release, it'll go back to its normal speed. So let's take a look at what's needed to set up this functionality. We're going to go into the third person. We're going to find the third person blueprint and go to this BP underscore third person character. Double click on that. And you can see this is the blueprint code that I built for doing this. All right. So it looks a little bit complicated right now. I'm going to unhook this, and this will make things just a little bit more clear. This is so we can use the left shift on the keyboard, and we can also use a gamepad if we want to do the left trigger. So I'm just going to hold down Alt, and we can disconnect that. We'll just set this off to the side right now so we can just focus in on this area. Right, so the first thing I'm going to get is just a left shift button. Again, if we right click on here and we go to our inputs and we find, and here the keyboard, let's go right here, inputs, we'll go to keyboard events, and we open this up. You should be able to find under here your left shift right here. So you can find it there. If you are better at typing, you should be able to find left shift, I believe, and you can find it that way as well. So we've got this. Now we've got this as an input, and we can tell whether or not this button has been pressed and whether it's been released, right? If we were to take a look at the this BP third person character right here, if we take a look here at the BP third person character, we can actually find some different values and things that we can change within the character itself. So I'm just going to do a search in the details panel over here, and I'm going to type in max, and you can see that we can get to this character movement area, and we've got some different max, different values for things. We've got step height for like how far up a character will actually go and be able to step up on some kind of platform, so you can actually increase or decrease those values. You got max walk speed, which is the thing that we are going to be setting, and the default for that you can see is 500 for that value right there. And then they also have a jump Z velocity, but in this case for that we'll just have to type in jump and we can find that, and you can see the default for the jump velocity is 700. And so knowing some of those values, what we can do is we can use these nodes where we're actually setting those values. So we're going to do a set max walk speed. Let's take a look at that one first. So I'm just going to go right click in here, and I'm turning off this context sensitive. I want to search for everything. I'm going to type in max and then walk and see what we get. So you can see here that we've got these different things, right? We've got either a get or a set. So if we're going to get something, we're just going to get the values of whatever that thing is. We want to actually set this stuff. So we're going to do a set max walk speed right there like that. And that's going to give us this node right here. And then let's take a look for jump Z velocity. So if we right click and just say jump Z, and then let's say set jump Z velocity. So we've got the two nodes that we need here for this, right? And the thing that we want to actually affect is the character movement. So let's right click and say character movement. I've got this context sensitive on, and I need to scroll all the way down to the bottom and say get character movement. And so we're able to plug this into the target on both things. So we need to set this up first for what do we want when this is pressed, right? So we're going to plug these in, right? And so we've got the max walk speed. I'm upping this to, you can see 1,000 for the walk speed. We got the character movement in here. And if you see this, yours might look like a direct connection into that, just like that. And hold down Alt and then break that. What I did was added a reroute node, and these are really nice. You can just double click on the line and that'll give you a new knot that you can kind of pull around. You do have to be a little bit careful about this. So you can see if we click this, it's thinking you want to take it and connect it to something. If you push your cursor just a little bit below that, you should get something like these crosshairs to actually click it and move it around. And when you do that, you can actually delete it if you need to get rid of it. So I'm just going to move this thing right here like this. If it's off-centered, you can actually, if you're really wanting to be super organized with this stuff, you can right-click on this little output right there, and you can say straighten connection to reroute node, and then now that aligns that within there. You can just push it around and it should snap to the grid. So this is everything that we're going to do for setting it, setting the values on here. Again, you can play around with this and you can have fun. You might want to make this thing jump super high in the air. That's completely up to you. You can see for organization, I did another reroute node right here to kind of make it dip down and flow into here. And because we're using this character movement in multiple locations, I'm dragging out here. That's why I did this reroute node on there. If you want, you could have one character movement node and just plug into each one of these targets. It might just be messier with the wires and everything else like that. So this is really up to you how you want to try to keep this stuff organized and how clean you want it to be. Me personally, I think when you first set things up, it's always kind of messy, and then you spend just a little bit of time cleaning this stuff up. And then if you can give yourself some comments, it really starts to help you understand later when you come back to this. If you've taken some time to learn how to set this stuff up, give yourself a little bit of notes, and that helps you in the future to come back to anything you've done before in the past and be able to reset this stuff up again. So you can see it as it's released. What we're doing is we're just setting those values back to the default value that we had before. Okay, so again, you could completely change the character movement speeds and everything. All I would suggest for you is if you're like, I want this character to always be running a bit faster, you need to go get to the max walk speed and you need to set the default in here, and you need whenever this is released, you need to set these back to whatever the default value is that you're setting within through there. Okay. And then the last part of this is just because I'm trying to get this to work with the keyboard, and I also wanted it to work with the gamepad, I was using this node within here. We haven't really looked at this, but we can just right click on here. We've already gone to our inputs before, or we can scroll down and we can go find inputs. And if you want to go to gamepad values and open that up, you can see that we've got different things for the gamepad, left thumbstick, right thumbstick, and stuff like that. So those are values. And then on here, if you want to do gamepad events for the D-pad, the face button, which is like the select and start buttons, and then you've got your left shoulder. So it's got all the different values that you could want for something like this, right? So if you do see an axis value, that is a little bit different. It's like a thumbstick, and you're pushing that up and down. And then that's going to give you ever-changing values. That's a little bit different than if you're just doing a trigger. See this gamepad left trigger, like what we used. So that's more of an on-off, pressed release, right? And so we can take the logic and we can just say, hey, we're going to share this between this this input and this input right here, like this. Oops, sorry, I almost messed it up. Go to release, just like that. And then now we've got this set up to where we have the ability to use the keyboard, and we can also use a gamepad. And we'll just go ahead and play and just test this out. So again, our normal jump value is only going to go to here. If I hit left shift and jump, you can see I've got my much higher value. If I'm just running and then I hold down shift, I should be able to go a whole lot faster. And so you could just have a little bit of fun running around the map and doing that. So there's just a little bit of how we can add some additional character movement controls on there. Go ahead and feel free to explore some more of the controls that you see in the character movement area, and then see if you can find some blueprint nodes that can help you to dynamically change some of those values and just have some fun with it. All right, the next thing I want to show you is how we can set up cinematic camera actors. So these cameras have a whole lot more options than just this normal camera. And the biggest thing that we're going to take a look at is how we can control depth of field on our shots. So you want to come over here to the place actors area, come to Cine, and then we just need to click Cinema Camera Actor. If we go ahead and click and drag that in, it's going to give us a new camera that we can start working with. You can see it at the bottom here, and you might see something like this that's shown down here on the bottom. I'll just go ahead and zero this thing out, the location of it, pull it right here, push it up, and then rotate it around, and we at least have something that we can start working with. Okay. All right. So the other thing is I'm making multiples of these, so I would just give it a number at the end of this. This is like the fourth one that I've got in the scene. And so you can move it around like this, and you can see it within this window here. If you pin it, then we can select other things, and you're always going to see that shot up no matter what. If you unpin that, you deselect it, that little shot goes away. I'm not the biggest fan of that. If you wanted to turn that off, you can actually go into the preferences and you can turn off this little window if you want to. I don't think most people do that, but it's possible that you can do that. All right, how do we look through this camera? So if you take a look up here through perspective, we are going to see a list of all the different cinema camera actors that we've created. So here's this new one that I just made, and it's got number 4 on there. And then now we're actually piloting this camera. If you want to eject out, or if that's how you want to think about it, you can click this and you can stop piloting that camera. And so I'll move this thing around just like this and through here. And then the other thing is, let's take a look at the details panel over here. Okay, so get your lens setting and everything you got going on here. If we open up this film back, the sensor width and height, if you actually want to do a vertical format, you can copy this number, paste it in here, take this number and paste it down there, and you can do something like that. if you're trying to do something for social media, that is a 9:16 aspect ratio. So you could try to figure out numbers that are close to these numbers as far as ratios go. What I like to do is Photoshop does a pretty good job of if I need to convert numbers from one thing to another, I just do the image size within there and you can figure that out. So there's many different ways that you can figure out these numbers, but you want to keep aspect ratios that are similar to this, but you can just swap that. So the other thing that we've got is this focal length and min focal length and max focal length. So the default perspective camera, I think that's a 90 degrees is the focal length on there. If you scroll down and through here, the current focal length on this is 35. If we did put this at 90, it starts to flatten the camera out. You can see this. If we put this to 24, it starts to have more of a perspective. And if you really want to go like crazy fish-eyed kind of thing, you can go all the way down to 4. So you can see that this current focal length of 4 is only going to 4 because of this min focal length that we've got is set to 4, and then the max focal length that we could do is 1000. So I'll let you figure out what you would want to do with those numbers. I do think 35 is pretty good, and if you want something a little bit more extreme, then maybe you go into 24. So people that really know things about cameras, they could really get into these settings, and they're trying to make their cameras as real world as possible. So that's encouraging to see. I think it's also possible that you can crop to certain aspect ratios, so it lets you kind of dial in, but then also again crop in on the image. I'm not going to go too deep into that. Like this stuff can get pretty complicated pretty quick, and this is just kind of an introduction into things. While we're in here, the one thing that I would also like to have you focus in on is the depth of field aspect of things. So they do have under this focus settings. If you go ahead and put this draw debug focus frame on, and you start to play around with the values that they've got within here, and I'll go ahead and click this little eyedropper and maybe select the female character here and try to get it a little bit closer. Wherever this intersects with whatever things are in the world, this means this area is going to be in focus for us. Okay. And once you got that established, you could go ahead, you could turn that off. So that's one thing that you could do. This focus method also, they allow you to do tracking. So if you put on tracking and you do actor to track, you could click on Quinn right here, and it's going to tell you what the thing is that it's hovering over. So I'll go ahead and click Quinn. And then now you can see as I move my camera around, it tries to keep that focus plane right there on the character. So that'll be a pretty big deal whenever we get depth of field kind of moving on here. So let's just turn this off for right now. And then the next thing that we want to take a look at is if we scroll down here, this current aperture, which is set to 2.8. And if we pull this down lower and we'll do something like 1, let's do 0.25. You can see that it's not going to go any lower than 1.2 right now. Oops, let's go back on here. Let's put this at 1.25. And if I scroll up right here, that there is a min f-stop. And if we put that at, we can go all the way down to 0 on this, and I'll just show you what's going to happen here. The lower we go with this current aperture number, so if I do 0.25, you can see it really starts to blur out the background. Let me just tap G real quick so we can see what's going on here. We can go even lower, do 0.1. You can see it blurs out quite a bit, 0.05, 0.01. You can see we're still trying to keep that focus on Quinn. And even their tracking method might not give you the exact results that you're looking for. If you've got such a low aperture on there, we're really kind of pushing things. So I'll take it off tracking. I'll put on a manual, and then we can try to dial in and out where that comes in into focus and out of focus. So if we've got this really extreme aperture where it's really, really low, you see there's just like a little tiny slice of the environment that's actually in focus. So if we do 0.05, that does expand out a little bit more. And it's going to blur not only the background, but it's going to blur the things in the foreground too, because our focal distance or our focal range that we have is just like this very small area in here. So I'm going to try to get this to the Quinn model, something like this, and maybe get a little bit closer on her, right there like that. So you can spend a lot of time on just this portion here. I'm just trying to show you some pretty extremes on this, you know. The other thing that we could do is if we come here and when instead of looking at the default viewport, we can look at this cinematic viewport. And let's go back to our actor here, and then let's put this on here, and we can put this on a film overlay where we've got a grid 3x3. So we got rules of thirds that we can turn on for this. Okay. This also gives us these black bars around here so we can always know that we're in frame no matter if we scale the window larger or smaller. This frame here will react to that. And then this, if you know anything about the rules of thirds, the golden ratio, this is supposed to be like if we really want this character to be the main focus on this frame, it'd be good to put her in these areas of thirds. So we could do something right in through here. If you wanted to focus on the head, then maybe you're going to do something like this for a down shot like that. If you wanted her on the other side, you could put this over here like that. If we're trying to focus on the two characters, then maybe we would put them both in this area right here, and then we would start to work to try to get both the characters in focus. Let's raise this up just a little bit right in through there, like that. Okay. And then you can see how we're trying to establish these shots. So again, if you wanted her to be the main focus, the main character, you might want to put this here. He's still in a cool position over here. If you do have secondary things that you'd want to focus on, if you can see, maybe I'd want the characters to be primary focus, and then maybe some of this stuff back here is a secondary thing for us to catch our eye with. You could try to get some of those things to line up. So those are just rules of thumb. They don't always work out 100%. You know, sometimes you might have a shot where you're going straight down the center, where this is like a perspective kind of shot, something like that, 1 point perspective, just going off into the distance there. So again, it's just a helpful thing that you could try to use. If I was getting back further back here, then I might try to frame up with some of the background and still have my characters fall within here. I think this might be kind of cool where the characters are within this rules of third, and then I got some lights that are kind of keeping things in focus right there. So again, this is definitely helpful if you get a little bit lost with this, trying to figure out exactly where that focus should be on there. And then we can just turn that off. If you want to go off of that, you can go back to your default viewport. We'll go back here to this camera actor right here. And one thing that I really wish was a thing is if you accidentally move this camera, unless you've gone into sequencer, and we're going to take a look at sequencer, unless you have saved some keyframes for that, you can't get back to this camera position. Now, what you can do is you can select the camera, you can right click over it, and you can go to transform, and then you can say lock actor movement. And then now I can't move that camera. So that's one way of making sure that once you get your cameras established, you can lock them down. It does become a little bit more difficult for you once you want to start moving them around, and if you got to do some stuff with them. If you see them grayed out like that, that's what's going on. It took me a while to get this wrapped around my head that I just need to right click on there, go to transform, and I can unlock these and do that. So that would be my suggestion to you. Get them all set up like this. I'm going to put just an underscore right here just because I've got some extra cameras. One other thing is if you get a lot of folders within here that you're keeping everything organized, and I do suggest that you do that, and you need to close everything up because you've got a bunch of things open like this, and it's becoming very difficult just to see everything. You can hold shift and click this little arrow button, and it'll close everything up. Then you can open it again just by clicking, and then it'll collapse everything for you. And likewise, if you hold down shift and then hold down shift again and click it, it will open all the different folders so you can see everything. So this might be helpful for you. I do like to try to be as organized as I possibly can with everything. You can see I've got a folder for cameras that I made, and I can just click and I can drag this into this camera's actor right there like that. I think what I just did with this, just to save some space on there, I just did this so I can get this different name on there. Now I've got 4 different cameras. I can go to each one and I can take a look at this. It's still going to have this thing selected in here. If I've got it selected, I'll just deselect. So I've got a shot for the characters here. Got another one here with the environment and the characters a little bit. And then you can see this camera that we just set up right now. Okay, so this is going to allow you to set up cameras. It's going to allow you to progress through the level, progress in your quality, be able to build your shots. And the cool thing is you can always show like work in progress where you've shown that same exact shot and it keeps getting better and better and better. That's a really cool way to show off your work. And the other thing is with these cameras, same thing that we've looked at before. If you hit F11 and you want to do your high resolution screenshots, you can do that like this, right? Just like we've looked at before. And then maybe you want to do a multiplier where you render it a little bit larger. Go ahead and capture that, and you can see what it's going to spit out for us. And let's see, what am I matching here? Just this. Let me do this real quick. Go back into it, and I need to sort by date. And here's our new shot that we've got right here, like this. So I think it should tell us, yeah, what the size of that was. Let me grab this again real quick here. So yeah, I'm working on a monitor that's 2560 by 1440, and so that's going to double the numbers, and so it's going to give us a shot that's 5000 by roughly 2800. So if I go to 100%, should be pretty good. If I do F11 on here and then just move around, you can see the quality is not the best, right? One thing that I do need to check for, and let's do this so you kind of understand what's going on here, is I need to talk to you about screen percentage. So it took me just a second to find it just because I'm getting used to this new layout that they've put in here. But this little icon here shows you the real-time viewport, but it also has engine scalability. So you'd want to make sure that's at least epic for taking really good screenshots. If you really want to get crazy, you can put it on cinematic. You don't have to probably worry about material quality, but the screen percentage, I would want to make sure that this is on custom override, and I'm going to put this at 100%. What this does is it, for performance reasons, it tries to either reduce or expand the amount of screen real estate. So you can see that this is at 100. My screen is 2560 by 1408, like that, right? And I think what I need to do is I need to get this, it's in the default viewport thing, just like that. I don't believe that I need to hit Shift F11. So I want to make sure that I'm in full screen mode on there. I do see some bars off to the side on there, so that's a little bit concerning to me. I'd have to kind of figure out why it's not going to the max size on there for that. But it is going to at least give me the number here. If I put this at 200%, you can see that it's going to go up to 5,000. So that's probably overkill for at least working in the viewport. If you are getting bad performance, you can put this down lower to something like 50 or maybe 75, somewhere within there. But to get really good screenshots, I'll make sure that's 100% on screen percentage. Now, once that's done, then I can do this screen multiplier. I'll go ahead and hit capture for that. And then now we can check out and see what's the latest thing on here. I will go ahead and hit F11 on there, and let's just make sure this is on 100% right here. And yeah, we'll push over. So still not like the best quality, but it's better than what we were having before. Okay, so as time goes on, we'll take a look at even more options for what we could do to get this to look a little bit better. The other thing is if you render at a higher resolution than what you need, and let's say I was going to put these shots on the web and I was going to put these at 1920 by 1080, you're automatically going to get some like anti-aliasing along the edges because it shrinks this stuff down. So there are some things that are beneficial for rendering higher and then just scaling it down a little bit later, and it makes those things crispen up. All right, so that's a little bit of a look at setting up Cine camera inside of Unreal, being able to get some better quality shots out of there and getting very predictable results, and being able to set up some depth of field. All right, now that we've got some different cameras made, let's go ahead and take our first look at Sequencer and see how that we can input our cameras and build some different camera cuts to show off the cameras that we set up. We'll also take a look at the fade track so we can learn how to fade between these. Currently, these shots are not doing that, but we'll take a look at that and we'll see what those options hold for us. Okay, to add a sequencer to our level, it's pretty easy. We can come up to this menu that you see right up here and we can say add level sequence. That's one way that you can do it. Or if you're in a folder within through here, you can right click and you can say add level sequence right there. So either method, if I'm in the folder structure, it's going to automatically put it in the folder right there. If we come up here to this area and say add level sequence, it's going to open up this dialog box and it's going to ask you, where do you want to place this? Now, I've made a folder for myself and I like to keep the sequences that I make in one area. So you can give it a name and I'll call this camera cuts like this and just say save. And then it's going to open up this track for you, okay? If we go ahead and take the cameras that we made, the Cine camera actors, and I'm just going to select this, hold down Shift, select all these, and I'll click and I'll drag them into this area right here. It's going to automatically put the cameras in for us. I'll just close this up right here. And it also makes a camera cuts track for us, all right? I'm going to pull this part of the interface up just a little bit more and then give myself just a little bit more room down here on there. I probably don't need this much space in here, so I'll condense that just a little bit and I'll expand that. Okay, so I like to work where I can actually see the viewport up here like that, and we can have this here. If you've got multiple monitors, it is possible that you could go and say window and you can say viewports and you can click a new viewport and it'll let you have a floating window that you could place anywhere within here, right? And so you could do the same thing we've been doing with all the other viewports. You could look at the different cameras and whatnot and through there. So this is really up to you if you want to do that or not. So I just want to show that as an option that's possible for you. Right now you can see that we've got a range for how many frames that we're working with within through here. Right now it starts off with looks like 150 frames right around there. If we take this and we click and drag, you can see, yeah, it's right at 150 for our frames. So this is letting you see the range on there. So like if you wanted to just see a smaller slice of this, you could do this here. I'm going to have us work with 900 frames, and I'm going to push this past here to about 950 frames like that. And so it'll give us plenty of room past this. If I want to drag this all the way over like this, you can see this is the actual thing. Like if we had an animation date on here, we would see it update the animation. So I'm going to just keep pushing this to where you can see this number get to right around 900 like this. And if we need to go frame by frame, you can go to this next frame, and I can just click once, twice, and I'll get this right at 900 frames. What I want to do with this now at this point, I can right click over this little red tick marker that you see there and say set in time. And what you're going to see is this red marker here. This green to red is the actual time line that's actually going to keep playing over and over again, right? So if we want to increase this, I'll just right click on there and say set in time, and you can see it snaps right to that marker there. So now that we've got this set up, we've got a nice range. If we do 900 frames like that, if we're doing 30 frames a second, then that should give us right around 30 seconds for that sequence that we're going to be setting up. Okay. And then math-wise, if we want to divide this into 4, depends on how many cameras that you've got, you just take your frame number, divide it by however many cameras you've got, and that should give you a rough estimate for how long these should be. So in my case, I need each camera cut to be about 225 frames. So if I drag that out like that, you saw that I got that number within through there. And if I drag this time slider, I can hold down shift and it'll snap to the end of that. To go to add the next camera cut, I can go to this little plus button that's right there. You can see it automatically put this first Cine camera actor 1 for us. That's cool. If you want, you can select it and you can get rid of it. And if you do that, we would have to set up a new camera cuts track. And it looks like we've got one right here like this. Go ahead and hit plus, and you can see we can add a whatever camera we want to this. So we can click and drag these. I'll just push this over right here, and then we can drag the end time right there. Again, if I just drag this out right here to 225, I can do that. And then if I click this first part here, I'm going to drag it all the way to the 0 time marker. Okay. So now I can just go ahead and hit this plus, hit Cine Camera Actor 2. This one I want to be at 450 frames. So I'll just grab this and pull it right about here, just like that. And then again, I can take this, hold down shift and snap it to this. Go ahead and click the Cinematic Camera Actor 3. And then I'm going to take this one, and from 450, I need to be at 675. Right about here. So I'll just drag this over and then do that there. If you have trouble landing on those particular numbers, this is where you can take this part of this manipulator and then this part and then shrink it down, and then you can get really close into the frame numbers that you're trying to go for on there. So again, I'll just put this at 0, and then this one will be at 900 right there like that. So you can numerically put those in as well. So let's go as camera cut, and I'll do Cinematic Camera Actor 4. And if we set this up correctly, we should be able to see through our different cameras. But nothing seems to be happening right now. That's because this camera right now is actually selected, and we're viewing things through this particular camera. We can do the same thing for this, and this, right? So if we have animation data on there, this will be a little bit more apparent. But if you want to see the different cuts for the camera, you need to select the camera for the overall camera cuts. Now, as we scrub through this, you should see this update and show us the different cameras that we've got going on through here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. You got to make sure you save it. All right. I'm going to close this down. And then now we've got this camera cuts. If I want it to play in the world automatically, we got to do a few things. So I'm going to take this camera cuts that we just made, click and drag it into the world. If I tab G, you can see all the game controls that we've got for things. I'm just going to put this at the 000 location right here. And if we wanted to make the icon a little bit easier to select, we could just click and maybe drag it off. You can see I've already got one in the world, but I'll explain that a little bit later. It's possible that we can call these in blueprints, but for right now, just to make things a little bit easier, if we've got the this camera cuts in here, and looks like I had one from previously. So I can just do this. I like to keep everything organized within folders. So I got a sequence folder. I'll just throw it in there. And then I'm going to tell this to autoplay. So it should just automatically start up. and right now it's set to do not loop. So it'll display once and then it'll end. I'm going to put this on to loops indefinitely and then just go ahead and hit the play button right here, which should give us the selected viewport, and we should be able to take a look at the camera cuts. All right. I just want to check the timing and make sure everything's actually working on this. So you can see it's going to the different cameras that we've got. Obviously, you can see that we've got our player that is set and he's actually showing up in the world. So I'm going to show you how to disable that. Let's just make sure it goes to the last camera and then we'll exit out of here. So let's go ahead and exit out. All right, so let's take a look at that sequence that we just put in here. They've got some nice options for us. They've got this disable movement input, so you won't be able to do anything with your controls. Disable the look at input. You can hide the player, hide the HUD. Now, if you do check this disable camera cuts, the cuts that we just set within sequencer will not work. So leave that one alone. Just check these boxes right in through here. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit save real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit play and hit F11 to go into the full screen mode. And you should be able to see that we're going to start cycling through these different cameras that we've got and do the different shots that we've set up. All right. Okay. So that's working. I do want to let it go through one time just to make sure the loop's working, just to check that. So just be 1 second after we've verified that the loop is working, and this is the last camera. We'll take a look at doing camera fades where we can fade to black. So the loop is working good. I'm going to hit escape on this, hit F11 to go back out so we can see everything that's going on. And then now if we need to go back into the sequencer, we can either select it here and we can double click on there to open it up, or we can come over here and we can double click it and open that back up. All right. So right now we see all the different cameras. If we put this on this camera view here, through the camera cuts. And unfortunately, right now, at the time of me making this video, there's not a good way of doing a crossfade between cameras. Just because if you think about that, that would have to render two different cameras in real time and then do some type of fade between it. I don't think the fading component of it would be that big of a deal, but the fact that you would have to render two cameras would be pretty taxing on your system. So right now, what they allow you to do is you can fade to black and then go from black to fully opaque within the level that you see. So to enable this type of track, we're just going to right click and we're going to make a fade track that you see right here. So go ahead and click that and I'll make a new fade track for us. And then now I'm going to hold down shift while I move this. It should snap right here. And then I'm going to put this fade to 1. And you can see if we're looking through this camera with the camera cuts, it's going to be really obvious what's going on with this. Go ahead and click this and we can add a new keyframe right here. And if you want, we can set it to be create a key whenever like a channel, like any of these values that we set or stuff, it'll automatically make a keyframe for us when we change values. So if you want to use that, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep clicking this button every time we do a new change to something. Okay. So I'm just going to drag out and then do about 15 frames like that. And we'll put this fade value to 0 because I've got that auto key thing on. It's going to automatically set a keyframe for us. So you can see it's going to go from fully black to fading in. Now, if I go in here and just tap G, I can get rid of my game controls so you can see what's going to go on there like that, right? So it's also possible that we could select one of these keyframes. Let me hold down Shift and see if I can select both of them like that. And if we click and drag, let's see, click and drag holding Alt, we can make copies of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this at 225 right here like that. Now this is going to give us the opposite of what we need. So I could just take this here and I could drag this this time right past let's see 250 right there like that. So if I drag this I do need another one of these keyframes here because you see we've gone from black to the 0, and then I would need another one here that this value should be 1, and it looks like I messed up the values on there, right there like that. So let's do 210, and let's do a value of 0 going into 1. So you can see what's going on here like that. Okay. So this needs to be a value of 0, so we can fade out for that. Okay. And actually, if I want to keep the timing correct on there, I should put this at 240. Right there like that. Now that I've got this actually working for going from one camera to another and fading correctly, now I could just drag a marquee over all of these right here like that. Let's put the time slider right at 225. And then I'm going to hold down Alt and then drag this out here to the time that we set already for this. Let me just drag these over right there. I'll hold down Alt again and drag this out here. And let's just drag them from right there. Okay. And then I just need these two here. So I'll just click and drag a marquee right there, hold down Alt, and then drag these over here. Let me just make sure I'm moving from the right position. Okay. And then we can just try this out with sliding it through and seeing how it works. Okay. So every time you do these changes inside a sequencer, you do need to make sure you're saving. So I'll save it, go ahead and close it. And then let's go ahead and play this and hit F11 and see if everything's working with our fade tracks for us. Okay. So it should give us a nice little time for each one of these shots that we've got going on here. And then it should fade to black and then open it back up and keep cycling through this. All right, so this is just the first step to show you a little bit about sequencer, show you how to get your cameras in here. As we move on and add more complexity to things, we'll add some camera motion to things. But right now, I just want to be able to make sure you can establish your various shots that you're trying to build with this. So we're at the point in the process where we need to start taking a look at better quality lighting. So I'm going to step you through that. Before I get started, I'm going to take all the lights that I've got within my scene and anything that has to do with lighting and atmosphere post-process, I'll go ahead and delete that and get that out of the scene. So currently you can see that the only thing that is lighting up the scene, and I did have one more rectangular light that was attached to this object here and was moving, so I'll just go ahead and hide it. So you can see everything that we got going on is completely coming from the emissive from our materials. So we've already looked at how we can set up a material for that. I would caution you on how much you light your scene with emissive materials, because at the time of the making of this video, lumen, the quality of lumen is not quite high enough to where you get a noise-free image from this. So you might see this blobbiness. You can see as I move the camera around, it kind of dances around a little bit, and you might also see that there's a little bit of ghosting at times as you move the camera too fast. So just know that this is a limitation of lumen right now at the making of this video. I am sure over the course of time that this quality of lumen will probably increase. So maybe some of the things I'm telling you right now won't hold true in the future, but as of right now, you do need to be conscious of how much you're trying to light the scene with emissive materials. Now, one thing that you can do is you can light the world with emissive, get the visual effect of it, but then you come back through and that you make sure that you have an actual light in a particular area for things on this. If you're going to do something like that, you can make sure that you have the intensity. You can drag that down kind of lower. You can also, if I tap G to turn on the game mode, you can control the attenuation radius, how far the fall off of that is, and in combination with that and the intensity, you can start to simulate that light is bouncing around on there. Okay, so that's just something about emissive before we get started on there. The next thing I want to talk to you about is at the very beginning, this eye adaptation or basically this idea of you being in a dark environment coming out into light, and it takes your eyes some time to adjust to that. So that's a cool effect that they put into the engine. It's on by default, but it can cause problems whenever you're starting to light your scenes. The reason for that is sometimes it makes it a little bit difficult for you to understand exactly what the lighting contribution is and the values of your lights. And it does seem to change based off of that. So that's the one thing that I'd like to fix right off the bat. So we've already looked at this before. Let's go to the VFX area and we should be able to find a post-process volume. We'll click that, we'll drag that into the world, and then let's just go ahead and set its location to 000 right now for that. If we do this infinite unbound for the post-process volume, it doesn't matter how big the post-process volume is, where it sits in the world, it will fill the entire world. So we need to scroll down towards the bottom of this for this and go to post-process volume settings. And you can see that there's this infinite extend unbound. Go ahead and check that, and then that will fill the entire world, and it doesn't matter where it sits. Okay, the next thing I want to do in this post-process volume, we'll scroll up and we need to go to the lens setting, and there should be, let me go to the exposure area. So find exposure. We'll go click this metered mode, and what I'm going to do is put this on to auto exposure basic. I'll turn on the auto exposure compensation, that's set to 1, and I can turn on this apply physical camera exposure, and I'm just going to turn this stuff off, just make sure that that's off. And then this min brightness and max brightness, you can see how much of an effect this is starting to have on things. I want to make this consistent, so I'm going to put the min brightness to 1, and then I'll put the max brightness to 1, and then now you can see it's going to clamp that to where the only thing that's going to be happening is we're going to have this very consistent amount of light that's going to be within the scene. It's not going to go super dark, and it's not going to go super light because we're controlling that with these values on there. So that's the first thing you want to do, and you want to set that up. I also like to take everything that I have with lighting and post-process and atmosphere, and I like to put it into a folder, and I call that lights and atmosphere. So I'll just go ahead and click and drag the post-process volume and put that within through there, just like that, and should be good to go. I'll close this one up on here. So the next thing we'll look at is setting up our main lights. So I do want you to think about a basic 3-point lighting setup where you would have a main shadow casting light that's coming from a direction that's going to give you the bulk of your light and your shadows. Then you would have a bounce light, so light that hits the floor and bounces up and illuminates the surface and gives us a little bit more. And then we will use, with our lights, we will use a skylight to simulate bounce light within the world. And then the last part that you would have is on the backside of an object, you would have rim light. So because we're in an environment, if we want to do some very specific things with rim light, we can take a look at how we can limit light using lighting channels. But for the most part, we're probably just going to be using some simple lighting setup within the world and using that with a combination of height fog within the world. Yeah, so we won't have a true 3-point lighting setup, but we'll try to emulate something like that. All right, so the first thing that I would like to show you, let's take a look at these different lights that we've got in here. We've got a directional light. This is pretty good for if you have an outdoor environment, if you want to simulate that you have this outside light for things. If you hit Control L, you can hold on Control L and you can just click and drag your mouse and you can move the lighting direction around on there. So you can see right now we don't have any bounce light. So this light is going to be very intense wherever there's light, and then wherever there's not light, it's going to be pretty dark within through there. It's possible you could also just use the rotation gizmo tool on there so you can control the direction of the light that way. All right. So again, until we put some bounce on there, it's going to be pretty much on off. If we go into these darker areas, you can see that we are getting maybe just a little bit of illumination within through here, but not very much. The default lighting value for this is set to 1 on here. So that feels, actually, I'm sorry, the default lighting intensity is 10. And that feels pretty intense. If we put this down to, let's go down to even something like 5 or so. That's not feeling quite light enough. This to me feels like it's not like a noon lighting scenario. Now our shadows are telling us something a little bit different. If we did this, if we hit Control L and drag this to where it's straight up and down, this would be more of like a noon lighting scenario. Accidentally clicked a light on there. So again, we've got this upper light coming straight down. We've got our directional light. Let me just throw that in here so I can see where that's at. And we'll drag this up a bit. So to me, when we get into, I think this value of 10, which is their default, that feels more like a noon lighting setting, right? And as the light starts to fall within the world and starts to set a little bit, just do this here, and let's hit Control L. That as the light starts to fall across the surfaces and gets the shadows a bit longer, you would want to actually start to dip the value of this light and start to make it a little bit less as it goes down, right? So the other thing that we can play around with is this source angle that we have. So right now our shadows are very crisp and very hard edged. They seem very CG to me. So if we start to drag this value up, and you can see I'm getting somewhere in the value of maybe 5 or so with this, the light is pretty crisp at the where it meets the surface, and as it goes further into the environment, it starts to get a little bit softer. So you can play around with the values on there like that. Um, Now I do have ray tracing turned on within here, but I do believe if we went to the project settings and we started to take a look at the engine and we go to rendering, we can see some of the rendering features that are on here. So by default, I do believe you should have enable virtual texture support. Those should be on. If we scroll down, I am using Lumen for all the different methods for global illumination, for reflection method. I do have this use hardware ray tracing when available, so that's at least available for us. So if we wanted to do some path tracing and things like that, you'd be able to turn that on. Now, if you turn some of these features on, it might tell you you're going to need to restart the engine. So I might take a look and just set all these up um, all at one time. The shadow method, this is the virtual shadow maps. You could either use that or you could just do the older method of shadow maps. I'm going to leave it on those virtual shadow maps. If we do use Nanite, that's supposed to be the method that they want you to use with that. You could have support hardware ray tracing on, depending on if you got an RTX card. So you do have to have a higher end card for that. And I do have this enabled to where I could do path tracing with this on through there. We've got a nanite on for that. So we've got the ability to have nanite. And then when we were talking about that, the ability to have auto exposure, I did turn that off, but you can turn that on or off depending on what you have on the post process node, right? So if you did have auto exposure on, you could tell it which method that you wanted to do. So it could be this auto exposure basic, and you could do this auto exposure bias. Maybe that's set to 1. Yeah. So I'm just going to put that on manual. I'll go ahead and close this up. So those are at least some of the options that I was using within the project settings for stuff. All right. So there's one light. We could hide the directional light. If we looked at, let's go take a look at a spotlight real quick and pull this up. And you can see this one is unique because it feels like if you've ever seen something in a circus, I always think of the like the elephant in the middle of the round part of the circus, and we've got this cone of light basically, right? And I'll take the intensity and I'll put this up a bit higher. I'll put this at 20 just so we can see what's going on with this. You've got your light color. We do have our attenuation radius, and that's how far out the light will reach. And most of the lights, they do have this attenuation radius. They might not have that for the directional light that we just looked at, but most lights have this fall off on there, so you can get some kind of control with that. This one has an inner cone and an outer cone. And so if the inner cone match the outer cone, this is going to say what's the fall off in softness, right? So within the inner cone, 100% lighting, and then the outer cone falls off to 0. And if these numbers match, I'll do 44, you can see we get this perfect CG edge. I'm not a fan of that. I would want that to be nice and feathered off like that. So we can get a whole lot of light in there, and we could take the outer cone and push that out. So that's one thing. And just like what we looked at before with the the source, let's see, on directional light, they're calling this the source angle. And on spotlight, let me drag this up in here, they are calling this the source radius. So if we drag that up, you can see, let's get a value of probably something around 20 or so. You can see we can start to get that softening of the shadow that we were looking at before. Now, the reason it's filling in with all this blue is actually because of our emissive material that I have in there, and I've got a whole lot of blue put into the emissive, so that's why it's doing this more like bounce light with the blue, in case you're wondering why I'm getting that that color change within through there. Okay, so that's going to show us a little bit about the spotlight. Let's hide that one and turn that one off. Next thing we should take a look at is the point light. And if we click and drag out a point light, hopefully that seems pretty obvious to you. We've got basically a single point in the world, and light goes all the way from this 360 degrees around this light for us. So we've got the ability to control the intensity, just like we were doing before. We do have an attenuation radius, so we can make that smaller, or we can push it out into the world and have it affect more parts of the world. So I can put this up to like something like 5,000 right there. Same thing for the softness of the shadow that's on there, the source radius. We can drag this up and we can make that a bit softer for a shadow. So I'll do something like 20 for that. And we can drag this thing around. Now, sometimes you might want an effect of a point light, and we're just doing some fake bounce light within the world. And so you wouldn't want to use a shadow on there. So you can turn off the cast shadow on there at that point, and then maybe you put the value really, really low. And then this is just, again, going to simulate that you have some things in the world, and it's just bouncing up and hitting that surface. The closer you get this light to a surface, the hotter it's going to get. So you do have to be a little bit concerned about that. So there's probably some sweet spot where you want this to be from distance from your meshes. And then I can take this and do something really low, like 0.25 or 0.2, somewhere around within there. Okay. So that will give you the point light. Actually, I'll leave this on. I'll make this a bit brighter. Just push it over here. Push it up into the world. And sometimes this is pretty good for just filling up an area. Like I wanted this area over here to be a little bit lighter, just because it got a bit dark, and I just needed to add just a little bit of light to the area. So I pushed it within through here, made the attenuation radius pretty high on it, and then I could put this at a low value like this. If I wanted to hit the wall, I'd have to push it back a little bit further. And sometimes to get the right effect, you might need multiple lights. So if you hold on Alt and then click and drag out, you can see I can drag out copies of this, or we can hit Control D, and that will duplicate the object, and we could just move multiple copies over. So maybe I need these two to be here. I'll hold on Control, select that, and then I can drop down the value of those a little bit lower. So you might need multiple lights in combination with each other to get the overall effect that you're going for. So I could just throw these in here too, and I'll just turn off the visibility of that for now. And then the last light that we could take a look at is this skylight. So I'll just click and drag this into the world. The location doesn't necessarily matter with this. I usually put this at 000 location. If you put the mobility to movable and you turn on this real-time capture, it might give you this warning that it's telling you that it requires at least a sky atmosphere component. If you wanted to try to capture what's going on lighting wise within the world, you want to turn that on, we can go to Window, we can go to environmental light mixer, and this gives us a tool that will allow us to easily create the different components for adding all like a outdoor lighting scenario. So we've already got a directional light, so we'll add that. This is asking for a sky atmosphere component. If we go ahead and click that, that'll give us this sky atmosphere component that we're needing. You could create volumetric clouds, and it'll give you the height fog. So if you want to just easily and very quickly add all the components, also we already have a skylight within there, we could just add all these components and it mixes everything together to work as a system. This is really good for outdoor lighting and just doing a setup for that. So if you're looking for that, go ahead and do that. What I would rather do with this skylight is I would rather, instead of using the world as the way to light it, I would like to turn off this real-time capture, do this drop down, and do a SLS specified cube map. At that point, it gives us this cube map area where we can go and we can start to choose different IBLs or image-based lighting scenarios. These are HDRI files. If you were to double click on it, you could find it here, or you can find within the engine content where this stuff sits. So they've got these actually come with the engine. Okay. And so you can see each one of these, depending on the color scenario that they've got, it's really going to take a big effect on the overall bounce quality of the world and what the lighting values of this is. If you want to control the intensity of this, there's this intensity scale. So if I put this up on 5, you can see I can really illuminate the world quite a bit with this. I'll just have G so we can get rid of the game information on there. If you go, I do like this this Epic quad panorama. I feel like that one works pretty well. This is like a neutral gray. So you ought to go through and kind of see what you like. For this lighting scenario that I had built previously, I did like this sunset, this ambient sunset. It's got some nice oranges and pinks in it. This is what I was telling you about. We're lighting a big chunk of the world. We're using lumen, and it is taking into consideration this light that we have, which is an image-based light. So if you imagined a big dome and that this image that we've got here is wrapped around this, that's what's generating the lighting within there. And this is where I think this kind of falls apart, and you can see how much noise is within the lumen artificial lighting right now. We could pull this down. We can do like a value of 2 or so, something like that. So if we go really high with it, you can see we can start to illuminate all these different surfaces, and it's getting really, really bright. So you really need to play around with the values, see what works with the different lights that you have within your scene, and start to build it that way. Okay, so I've got these components. I'm going to get rid of the skylight. I'm going to get rid of these point lights and the directional light. And the last thing I'll do is this rectangular light. So what I like to use right now, I think these are pretty interesting lights to work with. It feels like a spotlight, but you get to control shape a bit more, right? So you get the intensity like we're used to taking a look at. I'll pull that up a bit higher just so we see what's going on. We've got attenuation radius just like we've looked at before, so you can pull that down or you can expand it out. I'll make that pretty large so it fills up a good chunk of the world. Then we have source, width, and height. So this is a little bit different where, remember we were talking about the softness of the shadows. That actually comes from the size of the light. So the larger the light, the softer the shadows will become. So if we pull this down to something like 10 by 10, you can see that those shadows are nice and crisp here. They do get softer as they fall off and through the world. So that's a really nice effect. But if you want really nice soft shadows, then you might have to use some larger values on here, just like that. They also have this barn door length and angle. And this feels a little bit like the feels a little bit like the spotlight in a way, where if we do the barn door length long enough and we control the angle and you make it a bit more shallow, you can see it's gonna build this softening effect, but it is in relationship to the shape of the light, right? You can also simulate artificial lighting like you would see fluorescent lights within the world. So if we did something like we've got a much longer width than the height like that, then we could do a really long tube light that we would have within the scene. So yeah, I'm just a really big fan of this light type. I think it's pretty interesting to work with, and it gives you what I feel like is a lot of options to play around with. And if we get something like this where we don't have a very large barn door length and we control the angle and make the angle pretty high, it feels like it's just a big pool of light. So I'm going to use this as my main shadow casting light. This is the light that I want to pull the most attention to the world. So I'd really like to focus in on this area right here. And I'll go ahead and pull this up and put in my lighting and atmosphere. I can go ahead and turn on that skylight real quick, and I'll put the value of this to something just like maybe 2 for right now. So we got a combination of just one light. We got some emissive, obviously that's contributing some lighting value in through there. But this is the main light that I want to have illuminate through here. Here's the other thing about tinting the color of our light. If you just said, you know what, I want some more orange in here and I really want this to be warm, you can do this, but you might think in your head you got this color where you're like, I really think it should be like this orange. That's what I've got built up in my head, what I'd like it to be. But as soon as you add that color that you think it probably should be, it's going to be really saturated, and there's going to be a lot of color to that. So usually what I try to do is tint that more towards white. So you can see as soon as we move away from white and we start to just add a little bit of tint of color to that, it really has a huge effect on the world. So if you thought about lighting as a brush, and it's a very big brush, and you're making big changes to your image with that brush, you need to be careful. You need to be careful with how much light and intensity that you're adding to things. So again, I know that I was doing this a lot whenever I was thinking about lighting at the beginning. I had this color in mind, and it was just too intense. So always start with white, move it towards where you think the color would be. So if I wanted this to be like the sun's going down and we get that red shift, I know I'm tinting towards the red, and you can see how much pink that's already adding to this, and we don't have very much saturation within through there at all. So I could just slightly back that off, and I can get just a little bit of the effect going on there. All right, so just be a little bit careful with how much color that you push within through there. And you can see I can push this over towards, instead of red, I'll push it more towards the yellow orange in that direction right there, like that. Maybe you give just a little bit more saturation. So a little bit of color is going to go a long way with this stuff. So here's the main area of focus that I want to pull your eye into. The next part is I want to go over here. So I'm going to hold down Alt and I'll click and drag out this light. But now I've got a problem where I've got equal weight for attention on here because of the light intensity. So I want you to look here more. I want you to look here as well, but not quite as much. So I can take the intensity and I can just start to drop this thing back down, and I'll do, let's do something like 10 for this one. And maybe even that's still too high. So I need to find this sweet spot within here. What I do like with lights a lot of times is I'll overdrive the value. I'll make sure I know where it's falling, and it's falling in the location, and it's giving me the shape that I want. And then after that's set up, then I can just pull back the intensity on there a little bit. So this is primary, secondary, and then if I want maybe a tertiary area that I want you to take a look at, then I'll rotate this 90 degrees and then push this back here like this, and then push it off to the side right here, pull back down through there. And I don't want this to be as lit, so we're at 7, maybe I'll pull that down to 5 right there like that. And then I do want this to be illuminated over here as well. So I'll add another one. So if I hold down Alt, we can click and drag out a copy, and then watch this. If we're working in a world, you can hold down Shift, and you can move the world along with that item that you're duplicating and moving around. So I'll just rotate this 180 degrees right there like that. And then I'll rotate this out like this within through here. And then give just a little bit of emphasis right there like that. So I think that's looking pretty good right now. So we've got some main lights, and I should have put this value right here. I should have renamed this and just added one here like this. Let's see what we got here for this. So this is going to be rec light 2, and then this will be the third, and this will be 4. If I would have named this rec light 1 at the very beginning, I think what I duplicated, it would have automatically given this the numbers like that. So it's up to you. You can always recontrol that later. So it's not a big deal. If I hit Control D, let's just duplicate that. You see it's going to do a rec light 5. And on this one, I'm going to rotate it here. You see it's got this little X on here. That's because we are on stationary. I want to do fully dynamic light. So if I put this on movable, what that was saying is if this is on stationary, it really only wants you to have 5. I think the limit is 5 lights that overlap each other at any given point. So you might have to take the attenuation radius, and you would have to control that and pull that down a little bit lower. So that's one thing that you could do with this, but I'm not worried about that. I want fully dynamic lights. So I will select all the lights, and I'll set them all to movable, and then I shouldn't have to worry about that at that point anymore. So here's the 5th one. I wanted to rotate this thing fully down. I want to put this inside this area right here, and I'm just tapping F so I can move that there. I'll push this right in this area. If I put it right in the center, I can get this nice and illuminated. I'll push it up to where it's not quite hitting the ceiling, because if I push it too far, all the light goes off right there like that. We'll try to get this centered up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's giving me a whole lot of illumination in that area. And now I can pull down the value of this to, let's try 10 and just see. And maybe still that's a little bit too light. I do want to give enough light in there that we can see, but I don't want to lose the contrast in there, and I want to be able to still have it have a little bit of mood going on to that. Now, speaking of mood, we talked about if we've got lights in atmosphere, I think that that starts to build the mood for our lighting scenario. So we are missing right now any kind of fog within through there. So I will like to do here. We can go to VFX, and you can see we've already made that sky atmosphere. If you needed to get to that, I'm going to use this thing called exponential height fog, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag that out into the world. I'll just make the location of that 000 just to start off with, and this fog density, I'll go ahead and put this, the highest we can go with this is a value of 10. Now everything went black because we got this fog in scatter color. If we started to raise this up like this and tint it towards a color, like say you felt like there was a low level fog cloud or something like that, you can see the value of 10 is going to basically cover everything. And then this fog height fall off, if you think about environmental height fog as like a big cube, and then there's a gradient from the bottom of the cube going up into the world, this is what this fog height fall off is. And the default is set to 0.2. If we put that at 2, we get an even bigger fall off on there. So depending on what you want to do with that. Now you can see if I start to lower that volume in the world and start to push it down, I'll do negative 1000 like this. You can see we have fog in the world, and it's starting to push down, and it's starting to get a little bit lighter as we go up in space and through there, right? Now, if I do this and set that value back to 0.2, the fall off of that range from here to here gets even tighter. So you might need to drop this down to negative 5,000. Let's push that there. See how you were starting to see lighter and it's getting less down there now. Let's put this at negative 15,000, somewhere around there. And we've just have tons and tons of fog. So I'm gonna drop it down even further. Let's do negative 25,000, somewhere in there. Okay, so it's starting to get there. And again, this is up to you what you're trying to do color wise and how you want to mix colors, depending on the time of day, if it's in the morning or if it's night, and or if it's a mid afternoon. Um, so this will have a big effect on that overall color. Again, you can push these values to black, and you could make it to where you don't see anything off in the world. So it feels weird that you could do black fog, but that is a possibility for you to do that. And if you wanted to do something really stylized, you can have super saturated colors. But again, I'm going to caution you against that. Unless you're doing something highly stylized and you're trying to do something a bit more realistic, the amount of color that you introduce to this is just like the lighting thing, where just a little bit of color goes a whole lot of way. And if we're talking about a brush, this thing is filling up the entire world. So this is a huge brush, right? So I'd be cautious about that. Now this does feel a little bit weird that you could have this fog density here, this fall off, and then you got this fog's max opacity. So it's like you could take the overall effect and you could start to just drop that thing down on there. So I would still just leave that as a value of 1. Now, if you saw what was happening, if I put this to 0, what I do like about the fog is it kills this horizon line, so you don't see this we're on this fake plane going off into nowhere kind of thing. So I am a fan of that could completely get rid of that like that. The other thing that I like to do, and I think this is a really cool look, is using volumetric fog. So this is just what we're currently using is like a stylistic approximation. It feels it's more like a post-process effect on top of everything. If we use volumetric fog on through here, so let's see where we've got to scroll down a little bit further, and you can see that we've got volumetric fog. If we turn that on, it's going to give us a much different look for things for sure. Let's go back to this area, that we've got now, this height that we've got, that might be killing things quite a bit for us. So I'm going to put this back down to 1000, and you can see what's happening here. So why I like this, we've got our rectangular light, and you can see if we had really thick fog in the scene, I'm sure you've seen this before in the real world, where if fog rolls through and it's late at night and you've got some street lights, that you get this really cool effect coming off the light. So we've got the possibility to emulate that, right? And so then this is where you might need to go and say, okay, I want to do this fog height fall off of 2. That lessens things up quite a bit. And then maybe this fog density, you start to find a number that really works for you, that's not super dense with the fog. They also have this start distance that you could push out. Doesn't really, the other method, you'll notice that quite a bit. It's not really working with the volumetric fog because we're filling up the world on there. Now, if you wanted to back off the amount of fog within the world, but you still want this amount of fog coming off the lights, we could take a look at that. We could back this off to, let's do something like 2 within through there. And you can see we still have an intensity for how much light is being scattered off of here. If you, let's just type in volume. So you got this volumetric scatter intensity. If we put this up to something like 10, you can see we can really crank this up with this light and get pretty crazy with it. So it's up to you how far you want to push this on here. Again, the default is just 1, so I'll probably leave things at the default value. I personally like this idea that the fog value is a bit higher. So I'll do point. Let's do let's do this on here. This let's turn off volume. Um, Wait a minute. I'm not sure. I shouldn't have changed this scatter distribution value. So looks like the default value is zero point 0.2. Let's just see if we put this at something like 1. You can see the effect that that's having. So let's put that there. If we do a lower number, it doesn't really seem to have a huge effect on there. So I'll just leave it alone on that. I'm going to go and take this fog density, put this to somewhere like 3 or something like that. Okay. So the other thing is you can see now it feels like we got a whole lot of bounce light going on here in the world. So you might have to go back to the skylight. You might have to retune this. So if I did this at even 0.2, let's see what it looks like when I just turn this stuff on and off. So it's not having a huge effect anymore. If we do 1, we can do something like that. And I just don't want it to kill all the values that I have within there. So I will put this at 0.5, something like that. And again, it feels like we've got a lot of light in our scene now. So you might, if you do some effect like this volumetric fog, you might have to come back through and you might have to retune your values. And I might need to lower these quite a bit. So it always feels like some kind of balancing act with things to get it exactly where you want it to be. So let's do a value of 3 maybe, just to make it look like there's some light coming through there, like that. Okay, so I think that's going to give you quite a bit that you can work with right now at this point to establish a mood on things. Again, if I'm feeling like there's just too much light in the world, I might pull down this attenuation radius on each one of the lights, and you can see it's controlling the fall off a bit more. So I'm getting a whole lot more contrast now. That's what I was aiming for. And I do like this thought that let's push this up a little bit higher. So let me go and do this. I'm going to do 500, and I want more fog within the scene. I do want this horizon line to die a little bit more, so I'm getting this number up. So you can do just 100 on there, and if I do that, I think it feels pretty cool, but pretty intense for the amount of fog. So 1.5. So you can see with these elements, balancing where they sit, some of the values on there, we got to go through this full tuning phase on there. So I'm going to leave this up to you. This is completely up to you, this scenario that you're going for. But I would like you to think about visual hierarchy, the intensity. Where do you want us to look the most? Where do you want to draw our attention to? And you're in complete control of that, right? And so I'm just going to try to again put a little bit of more emphasis here. Then this will be a secondary thing, and we still got a nice amount of contrast in there. I do have some values in there for stuff. Now, if I really only want to draw attention on there, and I want to get rid of this volumetric thing, again, we could go volumetric scattering intensity. If I put that at 0, you can see I can drop that out. So anytime you see something like this where you're really not super happy with that, if you want to just get rid of it, we can do that. And our emissive lights, they will have an effect on the volumetric stuff within there too. Okay, so this is roughly what I did for this area right here. I do think I have that, and I have this light here. because I really wanted to draw some attention to the characters. So I had a very specific rectangular light that went over the top of them. And then a little bit later on, you can actually animate this with the sequencer. So it's raising this up and down on through there like that. And I do need this bevel light to be attached to that. Once I do that, you can see the objects they all pretty much move together as one single parented thing at that point. Okay, so that's what I did for setting up this lights. So I know you're just scratching the surface of this. It's going to take you quite a bit of time to understand how to tune your materials together with the different light types that you want to use, together with the atmosphere. So I know this is probably a lot for you at the very, very beginning, but just start getting used to this workflow, have fun with it, and I think you'll see over time it becomes a really powerful tool. Like I said, this is probably one of your biggest brushes that you have, and it can really set the tone, the atmosphere, the mood on there. So have some fun with this lighting scenario and see what kind of combinations you come up with. Before we move out of the lighting section, I wanted to show you some of the values that I set up originally for this lighting scenario that you see here. So the first thing, let's just take a look at the post-process volume. I talked to you about making sure that's infinite and unbound. We can go ahead and set that up under post-process volume right there. And then we were going to go to the exposure setting. Those are on basic, auto exposure basic, auto exposure compensation, just set to 1, and then min brightness and max brightness set to 1. So that establishes that. After that, exponential height fog. Let's just take a look at this. You can see I actually have this one pushed up in the world just a little bit. Fog density is set pretty low, set to 0.5. Fog height fall off is set to 0.2. You can see if we scroll down here for volumetric fog is on here. Nothing's changed about the scattering distribution. So we've just got some basic setup for that. Then the main rec light that I've got here in this area, set to movable. Intensity is set to 25. You can see the lighting color that I've got on this. It's just tinted slightly towards orange for the lighting value on there. Attenuation radius is pretty high. It's set to 7,000. The source width for that, again, it's if we take a look at this, this is the rec light. So we've got a width and a height. So I did 120 by 60. So that gives a little bit of a rectangular shape on there. The barn door angle is set to 45. Barn door length is set to 50 on there. And then this light that I have within through here, similar setup to what we looked at before. You can see the color that I put on there is actually tinted towards blue a little bit to cool that area off. You can see the attenuation radius is pretty high on there. Source width is 200, height 120, and then we've got this angle here. It's close to 40, and then the length is a little over 100 for those values that we have on there. Then I just have some point lights within this area. I've got a point light that's back in through here to illuminate this this section, this quadrant that I've got. There is quite a bit of saturation on this light value that you see there. I also have this source radius of 50 pretty high, so we can get soft shadows that are on there. The intensity is set to 8, and the attenuation radius is set to 1,000 for that. And I believe if I take a look at this one, if I hit F, same setup for this one. So I would just have a whole lot of intensity going on in there. The only other thing that I could take a look at is this volume scattering intensity. That's set to 15 on that, set to 15 on this one. So that is a bit higher. Let's take a look at these and just take a look at the scattering intensity. I set this to 0, so we wouldn't actually see it in the world. So we have this one. I think this one's set to 0 as well. So depending on whether or not you want to see those actual lights scattering or not, we're going to change those values on there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete out these lights all over again. I'll leave the post-process volume. The other thing I wanted to show you is this. I'm going to hide the rec light. So the only thing that we have in this world is the emissive. And I just wanted to show you the power of the, if we go to the environmental light mixer, if we go to window, environmental light mixer, open that up. And then it's easy to go ahead and create a skylight, directional light, atmosphere, volumetric cloud, and fog. And when we do all those combinations together, we can do that trick where we can hold down Control and add L to that, and then move our mouse cursor around. And with this setup, it simulates us saying, like, if we push the light up, like this is a noon light setting, you can see some of the values change on this, and the color temperature and everything changes. So as it gets closer and closer to the sun setting, you can see that golden hour, and it pushes all the colors. Once it gets really, really low, starts pushing the colors to red. So it automatically is doing all this stuff for you. So that is a pretty nice setup that you might want to take a look at. I wanted you to understand the lights first before you got to just clicking some buttons and not really knowing what things are doing for you. So that is a really nice way to just get an outdoor lighting setup, get everything you need, gets these volumetric clouds for you, gets the sky atmosphere, gets the exponential height fog, and it's all kind of plugged in for you. To close out the lighting section, I haven't actually used this before, but notice that it was within here, this light mixer, and it's actually a pretty nice tool that shows you all the different lights that are within a scene, their different values that they've got, the color for them, and the lighting channels. So at a glance, it's pretty easy for you to take a look and see what you got going on. Let me show you the final lighting setup that I built, and this tool will make a whole lot more sense taking a look at that. So with this final lighting setup that I have within through here, you can see I've got quite a few different lights. I've got different point lights, rec lights. Actually, even it shows all the different lights within the blueprint. Now, was trying some of this out to try to change some of the lighting channels. I did notice I was getting a lot of crashes whenever I was trying to change the lighting channels within a blueprint. I don't know if that would happen to you or not. I might be a little bit careful about that. So I'm not really sure why this tool was causing it to crash, but at the time making this, I was having a few different issues with that. But this should be a really nice tool if you wanted to universally just change values on here pretty quickly. This is the attenuation radius. You can see if we pull this stuff over, we can see that you can get to the intensity, the light color, the channels, and you can actually select each one of the lights within here. So that might become a really powerful tool for you at the very end if you want to mix the different colors and lighting values to get that organized for yourself. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention, and that should be enough to close out the lighting part for this section. All right, to close up this section, I wanted to make sure we understood how to make our high resolution screenshots. We've already covered this in an earlier section. So I did show you that it's possible that we could go in with sequencer, that we could set up a play value for this if I hit F11. And actually, if you see the toolbar at the bottom and these black bars off to the side, you would have to hit Shift F11, and that will do a full true screen for you. We looked at how we could set up some controls to tap P, and that would actually pause the video for us. And then we looked at how we could set up, and I set up on my keyboard, I can tap 1, 2, and 3 to do different screenshot resolutions. And so if I just tap 3, should be able to build a high resolution screenshot for us on there like that. And I'll go ahead and tap P to go back out of there. So, and we looked at the camera fade stuff as well. So that's all fine and well. We would be able to get our shots that way. But I did notice something about this new version of Unreal. If you're a new user, this would not even probably be on your radar. But because I've been using Unreal for a while, they did change the behavior of this top bar within here. So if we do hit F11, you can see that it fills up the full screen, but it still has this bar on top. And if I tap G to get rid of our game stuff, and I just move the camera around and say, hey, I want to do a nice shot for this, we've already looked at if we wanted to go within here in perspective, and we say higher resolution screenshot, we could take that and we could capture it. The problem with this is if I go ahead and capture that, and if I take a look at it, my screen resolution is actually 2560 by 1440. So I'm missing a little bit of resolution on my screenshot, and you can see it's set to 1408 because it's taking up some of the space on here for this bar. So that's not the behavior that I would want. It's not the behavior that I'm accustomed to and used to. So I found that they actually have a workaround for this. If I hit F11 and go back within through here, they've given us these console commands that we could do here that will allow us to either show this one is the old toolbar. So we'll actually load up the old toolbar and the old behavior, and I'll show you that. They've got this version here that is a hybrid where it's the old toolbar plus the new toolbar put together. And then if you use this console variable here, it will do the toolbar that we see currently right here like that. Okay. So let's just copy this real quick, and you can see you're going to have to do the typing exactly for that. If I go down here, let me do this so you can actually see it. Go to the console command, and I'll paste this in here. And we got toolbars 1, and I'll hit enter. You can see this is that hybrid mode that I was telling you about. So we actually did this one. This mode will give us the old toolbar behavior and the new toolbar put together. All right. So really the behavior that I'm looking for is the old method. So I'll just take this and copy it. Once you get one of these in, you can hit the up arrow key and you can see everything that you've typed in before. So you could actually type in something that we've already done. And if you want to change the value at it, you can just click that and do 0. And so you can see now I've got the old behavior that they had before. If you take a look, the old one did not have a particular bar. So this was not taking up any kind of screen real estate. Now if I hit F11 and go in here, and you can't see my Windows bar down there. If I hit Shift F11, it will hide the Windows bar down below. Now I could frame this thing up. And in the old one, if you go up here to the upper left-hand corner, that's where it existed. I can go say high resolution screenshot. We'll go ahead and do that. I'll capture it. And then let's take a look at this now. So here's the new one. If I hover my cursor over the top of it, you can see now the value of that is 2560 by 1440. And now we get a true full screen capture for this. So I think it's a little bit of annoyance. I don't know in the future if they will do something to fix that particular problem or not. I'm hopeful that we could use the new toolbar and we won't have to do this workaround. But at the time of the making of this video, these are the values that you might want to check out if you wanted to do a true full screen on there. I'm just concerned about that because I do care about the resolution. And if you ever use this stuff for some of your backdrops on your desktop and things like that, obviously you want the scale and the size to be correct on that. So that's just one thing that I've recently run into, and I didn't realize it until the tail end of this. So I wanted to bring it to your attention in case you wanted to have full resolution screenshots. You would be able to make that and do that for yourself. So now you should have everything you need, at least at this point, to do all the modeling stuff. We're moving the modeling quality along. We are moving the lighting quality along. We know how to take good screenshots of our work, and so we should be able to document our work well. When we come back to the next section, we're just going to improve the overall quality of everything. It's going to keep going up. We're going to learn a little bit more about the sequencer so we can actually do movie motion on our cameras. We're going to learn how to actually render some of that stuff out. We're going to go into ZBrush and we're going to do some sculpting, and then we're going to learn about Nanite and how we can get really high resolution meshes inside of Unreal. And we'll just be able to have a really cool tool set where we can sculpt, we can make high resolution sculpts, we can set up lighting, we can do rendering, and we've got all the tools that we need to make really high quality art pieces.